1, 2, 1, 2. All right, yeah, you could go off the screen if you want. We'll play the intro. It's not 7 yet, but you hear me?
Okay. Were you able to get
We
the
live right now. Yeah, I got everything. Okay. I got all the stuff. We live. You're going up to what number?
This one is the whole one. This is part 1 right here.
But this is how many slides in it?
This is, I think, 75.
Oh, so I think I got the wrong one then. Let me see. Because this one right here is going
Nah. That's not it. I sent it to you in the text message. That's my old one. That's the out of Africa.
Oh.
I just sent you the new one in the text message.
Nah, you gotta send it to the email. I think you sent it to the email already.
Nah, I didn't. I'm gonna send it to your email right now.
Okay. Because I got the flyer and all that in the email. I say, what up, man? You ain't go live today?
No, man, I was feeling under the weather this morning, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling that well. I was feeling crazy. I'm you still got the debate tomorrow, right?
No, next week.
Okay. I'll probably do some tomorrow then. Probably get it popping later on the night. Tomorrow we get on like late night tip, man. What's going on, God Energy, man?
Yeah, I'm waiting on my man here.
Peace, brother. I'm about to send it's sent just now, so
okay.
We should be good money.
I see it. I got it.
Yeah, in the email.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, let me play my intro song and then we're gonna go in.
Yes, sir.
All right.
This is for my sisters trapped in religion. Wake up and free the babies. sa.neter speak the truth, he's on a mission. Yeah, the house of consciousness, the final call. Will your Bible was break up or just fall? In the house of consciousness, the final call. Stop believing in fairy tales, especially for I use the Bible like a lantern in the night, trying to wake up my sisters to the light. The house is closing in and it's a total mess. You ignore my wisdom, the ultimate test. Step inside the HOK, it's the toughest terrain when the truth hits hard. Cuts brain thinner, trying to wake you with the word in my hand to get you to the truth to help you understand. I gave you the scriptures, chapters and verse. I gave you the keys to break the curse. I gave you Torah, the one like with keys. Fight the man I'm chasing the house of consciousness. Final call. Whoa, will your Bible thumpers break up or just fall? Can't be that hard. You're preaching from your tube, looking for a handout. I'm spamming on fire, trying to bring a truth down. Welcome to the HOK, where the truth resides. No more hiding in the pews where the die. It's guys who speak against the Bible just to wake your inner sight. Come inside the HOK, we bring the light. Will your Bible thumpers break up or just fall? Stop living in fairy tales, especially God.
Yeah. Peace and Black Power family. Y'all already know what it is. We got my man God Energy here with another short shot. Fire. Powerful. So he's going to present Europeans, ancient and modern Britain. We're going to go in on that, man. So y'all better pay attention. He's going to go in, and we already know we got the unks in them out there lurking in the background, seeing if my brother make one mistake, which it shouldn't be like that because we all make mistakes. But this brother is going to be, at least I know, in the 90% correct on his information he's been studying. And so without any further ado, I want to pass the mic to you, my brother. What's happening?
Peace, family. Peace, family. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to present the information. You know what I mean? Just getting into the history that doesn't get spoken about. You know, we have a view of a monolith of a group of peoples, and sometimes we think that a geographic location is a proxy for a certain ethnic type or morphology, if you will. So this is just going to highlight some details that undo the pseudo claim that was put forth throughout colonialism, because it is the colonialists and the colonial establishment that put out a pseudo historiographical view, a pseudo ethnological view of Europe. And we're here to just undo that. So we're going to get into the substratums of peoples that were in Europe, and it should be a good one.
Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I'm ready. Let's get into it.
You ready?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
All right.
sir. Yes, sir.
Let's get it.
So starting off at slide 1, right there. Hold on. Let's see. Mm-hmm. So shout out to the DOC. Shout out to Issa Queen and her team over there. Shout out my boy Rep for the cover art here. We appreciate it. So we're going to get into this Black Europeans reality, and we're going to work derivatively off of the work Ancient and Modern Britons by David McRitchie. Next slide, Si. So right here is a map of the Aurignacian territory. The Aurignacian is a Paleolithic group, the major founding population of Europe, spanning from about 47,000 to 41,000 BCE at its earliest. It spread all the way from, as you can see, the Iberian Peninsula over in Spain, all the way past the Balkans and the Belgium area. And actually, when they did the genetic analysis of this Aurignacian culture, they could see that it's of the basal C1A clade, and that was found in the Upper Paleolithic European sample at Goyet Q116. That's in Belgium. But also they found C1b, identified as prehistoric remains dating from 34,000 years before present in Russia, the Kostanky Man. And I know a lot of us are familiar with the bust of the Kostanky Man image that they show, and it was of the C1b haplogroup. Next slide. And actually throughout this period and all the way up until 5000 BCE, you can see that Europe, Paleolithic and early Neolithic Europe, was absolutely dominated by the C haplogroup, the C1 haplogroup. So what you see is a map of Europe, and all of those white rectangles represent findings of Paleolithic Europeans with the C1 haplogroup, spanning from 47,000 BCE to around 5000 BCE. So these are the different findings all over the place that have the C1A haplogroup marker. So we can see that the Paleolithic Europeans, the dominant paternal haplogroup was the C1A haplogroup. Next slide. And when you look at the modern population that represents the C1A haplogroup, it is the Aboriginal Australians. And it says up to 46% of Aboriginal Australian males carried the basal C or C1b2b or C1b2b1 haplogroups before contact with and significant immigration by Europeans. So according to a 2015 study by Nagel and others, that is 20% of the Y chromosomes of 657 modern individuals. Before 56% of these samples were excluded as non-indigenous. So CM130 was apparently carried up to 2.7 of Aboriginal males before colonization. 43% carried CM347, which has not been found outside of Australia. So this subclade of the C branch hasn't even been found outside of Australia. So this right here points to a genetic connection between the Aeregnacian culture and the Aboriginal Australians. Next slide. So we have the work by David McRitchie, Ancient and Modern Britons, and it says, Mr. Samuel Lang, in his interesting revelation of the Katniss cysts, right, that's an area of northern Britain, imagines the earliest inhabitants of northern Britain were cumbocephalic, aka boat-headed, approaching to a Negroid or Australian, rather than to a Mongol or Arctic type. Again, he writes, this tribe of Aboriginal Britons must have closely resembled the Australian or Tasmanian than the Laplander or Eskimo. Next slide. So we're seeing some correlation with the genetics that we just looked at. And it says, we know, says the writer of a small pamphlet on the subject, that writer being J.C. Goodfellow, that the first inhabitants of Britain, let us say certain tribes of ancient Britons, and more especially those of the northern parts, were craniologically of a type approaching to the Negro or to the Australian race. So rather, regardless of how archaic the verbiage may be and it doesn't fit our sensibilities, what they are describing is a morphological type, right? No implication of a racial hierarchy, but just the morphological type that is measured through the bone analysis. Next slide. So through the powers of physical observation and metrics, they saw the morphological similarity, the skull shape, the brow ridge, the prognathism, and combined with the deep genetic link between the Aeregnacian population and the Aboriginal Australians, that being the connection of the C haplogroup, it proves that the Victorian era anthropologists got it right in this regard. So without the benefit of genetic analysis, they undeniably saw the physical results of that deep time genetic ancestry between the original inhabitants of Britain and the Aboriginal Australians. So it's the genetic evidence that confirmed their predictions. The same way Darwin was confirmed about there being intermediate species like hominins, Australopithecus, that linked this genetic connection and evolutionary connection between ape species and humans. So it is these very types of predictions that confirm these early scientists and their observations. Next slide. So it says, but the most telling evidence is that afforded by the stone monuments, which are found in all of the countries which have been inhabited by those races. Tasmania, home of the Negritos, has its stone circles and cairns, and Scotland shows the presence of the same people and the same works. In the Australian Deccan, there are dolmens and stone circles, as in the Australoid Britain and West Europe. So they're talking about this continuous material culture of stone circles, monuments, dolmens, and cairns. And there is within the jungles of the one part of Borneo, at a great area known to the Malays as Falan Batu, the field of stones, right? It contains rocking stones, standing stones, and many of them are covered with marks resembling the curious pictures writing found on scattered stones and rocks in British Guinea and other parts of South America. So the present inhabitants know nothing of their origin and believe them to be haunted by spirits. right? A memory, doublets of the time when their builders, a different race, lived among them. So the current Malaysian peoples say that these stone circles are from a different peoples. Those it may be presumed were the Negritos, now found in the islands of the southeast. So it's these groups of peoples that built the stone circles in Malaysia, in Borneo. Next slide, please. So as we've seen, right, through the genetics, the anatomical morphology, and the megalithic material culture, right, there is this unbroken belt of peoples of the same haplogroup that represent a migratory line of peoples that not only shared morphology, they shared genetics, and they shared a megalithic stone culture. Next slide. So the ancient Britons and West Eurasians were cousins to the Aboriginal Australians, Melanesians, and Negritos. The creators of the Chauvet cave art in France, the bone flute makers, and the hunters of Europe's megafauna, like the woolly mammoth, were these peoples. Haplogroup C dominated the male line of early European males, specifically C1a and C1b. The modern population representing the C haplogroup today is found in Australia, Oceania, and India. So the peoples who were establishing the first Homo sapien culture in Europe share a direct, identical paternal lineage with Aboriginal people of Australia, but also they shared identical morphology. So if you were walking around in Paleolithic Britain, you would see peoples identical to Tasmanians, Negritos, and Melanesians. So are we saying that that French cavemen walked to Australia, or Aboriginal Australians from Sydney migrated to Scotland? No, right? But there was a distinct dispersion of a group carrying this exact sea lineage that reached both the Atlantic coast of Europe and the distant continent of Sahul and Australia. Sahul being the sunken continent that was over the water around that time. So they both originated from a common hub, and they split. One went to Europe and one went through India into Oceania, Australia, and even eventually to the Americas. Next slide, please. And these are depictions from the Chauvet cave. The cave art there showing the horses. They have other large megafauna fighting down there, whether bison, I'm not exactly sure. The depiction of the man next to that, right? That's an artist rendition of a hunter-gatherer, which is dating from 32,000 to 24,000 BCE. And the DNA shows that they lacked the genetics that produced pale skin in Europeans, suggesting they were dark-skinned peoples. And that's from the article, Modern Humans Arose in Africa and Expanded to Other Continents about 60,000 years ago. And that artist rendition is done by Tom Bjorkand, who did a artistic set of these early Paleolithic Europeans. He happens to be of Indo-European descent, and based off of all the information about Paleolithic Europeans, he created this meant to be scientifically accurate representation of Paleolithic Europeans. Next slide. Sa, is there a different visual setting? Because the words are kind of blurry. But these, this phenotype and morphology would have represented the same people that did the Venus statues. Nah, that's even worse. But the Venus statues, the Statopic man, and also created these carvings here, which is from a brand new study that's meant to represent instances of proto-writing, right? So you see on the clay all the way to
last time you was reading it off your phone, remember? It was clear.
Yeah, but you had put it on a setting where the words showed up clear. Right here, the words are showing up very blurry.
I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's your joint. I'm showing it. But you was showing it, you was reading it from your phone. That's how you should go right back to it. You got the slides on your phone.
Nah, last time I was reading it off of your
okay.
Your screen. Yeah. You had did something that made it. All right.
All right.
All right. Next slide. And these are the Oberkassel findings, those skulls there, dating from around 14,000 years ago. And the Oberkassel finds, it says, from ancient DNA reveals history of hunter-gatherers in Europe. And it says, we are finally understanding the dynamics of European hunter-gatherers, said Vanessa Villalba, or Villalba, a paleontologist at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany, and in the author of both studies. The new genetic analysis suggests
Yo, I'm
that
sorry
when
to cut you
farmers,
off.
yeah,
Sorry to cut you off, but it's crystal clear on our end. The people can see it on YouTube and all that. It's
yeah.
crystal clear. We see the words clear, not blurry or nothing.
Okay. I'm just having a little bit of a difficulty, but I'm gonna make it work.
All right.
So it says the new genetic analysis suggests, and I want everyone paying attention to the timeline, right? Because I'm moving in a chronological order, so these dates are gonna follow a chronology. So it says the new genetic analysis suggests that when farmers arrived in Europe about 8,000 years ago, that's 6,000 BC, they encountered the descendants of this long history, with light-skinned, dark-eyed people to the east and possibly dark-skinned, blue-eyed people to the west. Next slide. And this is from First Modern Britons Had Dark to Black Skin, Cheddar Man DNA Analysis Reveals. And I'm sure we're all well familiar with Cheddar Man findings from 10,000 years ago. It says the first modern Britons who lived about 10,000 years ago. So this isn't just the Aregnasian peoples that spread from, Spain to Belgium to Russia. This is all the way up in the British Isles as well, right? They had dark to black skin. So here is a genetic study using the term black, which is still proper to use in scientific articles, in scientific discussions when talking about population genetics and population clines and gradients. It is still perfectly permissible to use the term black. A groundbreaking DNA analysis of Britain's oldest complete skeleton has revealed. So it says the fossil known as Cheddar Man was unearthed more than a century ago in Go's Cave in Somerset. Intense speculation has built up around Cheddar Man's origins and appearance because he lived shortly after the first settlers crossed from continental Europe to Britain at the end of the last ice age. People of white British ancestry alive today are descendants of this population. Next slide. So it says it was initially assumed that Cheddar Man had pale skin and fair hair, but his DNA paints a different picture, strongly suggesting he had blue eyes, a very dark brown to black. Again, another genetic study. Well, actually, I think this is the same one, but using the term brown to black to describe his complexion. And right there, it shows you where Cheddar Man was found. It was in southern Britain, southern England. Next slide. So to summarize a little bit so far, this deep time diversity is exemplified by the basal C1 clade associated with the Aregnasian culture. The discovery of Cheddar Man 10,000 years before present in Somerset and the Oberkassel remains of 14,000 years before present in Germany proves that the Aboriginal Briton possessed a phenotypic profile of dark to black skin and blue eyes, demonstrating that genes for lighter pigmentation were not geographically fixed proxies for European identity, right? So to be a European did not mean light pigmentation. That is a new phenomenon. So in movies like 10,000 BC, we could see that Cheddar Man would have been a more accurate representation and depiction for the individuals running around. Next slide. So this is from an article, A Western Route of Prehistoric Human Migration from Africa into the Iberian Peninsula, right? So now this is bringing morphologically African type peoples or descendants of the continent of Africa into Europe via the Iberian Peninsula, right? And it says, being at the western fringe of Europe, Iberia had a peculiar prehistory and a complex pattern of Neolithization. A few studies, all based on modern populations, reported the presence of DNA of likely African origin in this region, generally concluding it was the result of recent gene flow, probably during the Islamic period. Here we provide evidence of much older gene flow from Africa to Iberia. So this is predating the Moorish expansion that they were just talking about. So it says here we provide evidence of much older gene flow from Africa to Iberia by sequencing whole genomes from 4 human remains from northern Portugal and southern Spain dated to around 4,000 years before present, from the Middle Neolithic to the Bronze Age. We found one of them to carry an unequivocal sub-Saharan mitogenome, right, of most probable West or West Central African origin, and to our knowledge, never reported before in prehistoric remains outside of Africa. So this was groundbreaking right here, right? So it showed that there was a movement of peoples from sub-Saharan Africa directly having West African and West Central African, lineages into the Iberian Peninsula. With a similar geographic range of the famed Ibero-Maurusians of North Africa. Next slide, please. And it says in this article, Genetics, Egypt, and History, Interpreting Geographical Patterns of Y Chromosome Variation, the widespread distribution of the Pt.1 clade, that's an E haplogroup clade, in the major language phyla of Africa, its existence in the Levantine Iraq region, and even the Aegean, right? So that's the Greek world. This E haplogroup, this African-born E haplogroup is found in the Levant, Iraq, and in the Greek world. And its likely post-glacial maximum date are significant and show how numerous bioculturally diverse peoples can be connected. So they're talking about how, later peoples in the Levant and later peoples in the Aegean can have this deep-rooted connection through their E haplogroup African-born ancestors. But the circle that I put up there also represents the expansion and temporal range of North Africans into Portugal that the previous slide was documenting and talking about. So we're also going to combine these two sources and use this as a visual representation of that movement of North Africans into Portugal that was previously stated. Next slide, please. And this is a representation of what those North Africans, Ibero-Maurusians, the Gobi people, the Mectoids of Mali, the Capsian peoples. This is a representation of what they would have looked like. This is a reconstruction done by the University of Chicago and Project Exploration. So these were the peoples that would have been moving into the Greek world, moving into the Aegean world, moving into the Levant, moving into Iraq, right? Moving into Greece. And also moving into the Iberian Peninsula, into Spain and Portugal via North Africa. Next slide. And it says, scientists have discovered the British are descended from a tribe of Spanish fishermen. DNA analysis has found the Celts, Britain's indigenous population, have an almost identical genetic fingerprint to a tribe of Iberians from the coastal regions of Spain, right, who crossed the Bay of Biscay almost 6,000 years ago. So people of Celtic ancestry were thought to have descended from the tribes of Central Europe. But Brian Sykes, professor of human genetics, Oxford University, said about 6,000 years ago, Iberians developed ocean-going boats that enabled them to push up the channels, right? And we just cited that those Iberians were coming from where? North Africa. So you have this movement of peoples from North Africa into the Iberian Peninsula and then further up into Britain, as this genetic study is telling us. Next slide. So we have here on the left-hand side a chart with at the bottom the basal C1a clade, the EV13 clade, EM81, and the PN2 clade on the chart to the left. And on the next column, it represents their geographic region. And on the next column, it represents the significance there. The EM81 clade is associated with the tin route, a major trade route that we're going to talk about in a next slide. The PN2 clade, it says, is a post-glacial connection, and diverse Afro-Eurasian populations. And on the text to the side, it says the spread of Afro-Asiatic. So this E haplogroup is associated with the Afro-Asiatic language phyla that the genetic study was referencing. So we're going to talk about the spread of Afro-Asiatic with this E haplogroup. And it says the Afro-Asiatic as a distinct culture long established in the East African Rift Valley expanded during the post-glacial period. And it's this post-glacial period that we've been talking about, with its primary breakup dated to the 9th millennium BC. This linguistic fingerprint correlates directly with the arrival of the Pt.1 clade and EV13 clades in the British Isles. Right, so this is suggesting a movement of the haplogroup and the linguistic fingerprint with it being Afro-Asiatic. So we're going to talk about the Afro-Asiatic linguistic fingerprint in Britain. And it says these early genetic markers established a resilient, dark-skinned indigenous population. So there's already at this time a dark-skinned indigenous population in Europe, specifically as well in Britain. And this would eventually facilitate the arrival of organized Levantine maritime trade networks. So moving forward, we're going to analyze the linguistic fingerprint and the maritime trade networks. Next slide, please. So this is talking about the insular Celtic languages, right? There's a substratum in insular Celtic languages. And this discussion focuses on a problem of the pre-Celtic substratum languages in the British Islands. And the article by R. Matesovich, right, begins by dealing with the syntactic features of the insular Celtic languages, Brittonic and Goidelic. The author's analysis enumerates innovations in insular Celtic languages and finds certain parallels in languages of the Afro-Asiatic macro family, right? So this has been known to linguists and philologists that there's a substratum in the insular Celtic languages, meaning the oldest Celtic languages, the isolated Celtic languages, that shares affinity with Afro-Asiatic. The second part of this paper contains the analysis of that particular part of the Celtic lexicon, which cannot be attributed to the Proto-Indo-European layer. So that the Proto-Indo-Europeans are the Yamnaya peoples, are these steppe ancestry pastoralists that are bringing the SLC genes for light skin, light eyes, and light hair. So there's a substratum in Proto-Celtic that cannot be associated with the Proto-Indo-Europeans. And where it differs from the Proto-Indo-Europeans, it shares similarity with Afro-Asiatic languages. Next slide. And some of the key differences from Proto-Indo-European include the syntactic innovation of the adoption of the verb, subject, object, word order. So this is common to Afro-Asiatic, and you see in the insular Celtic language, they also follow this grammatical structure of verb, subject, and object, but also the use of the prepositional pronoun. So both of these are linguistic and grammatical features that are familiar to Afro-Asiatic, where they differ from Proto-Indo-European and the other Celtic languages. That map on the side is a proxy for where these insular Celtic languages are still spoken. They are still spoken on the western portions, on the fringe western portions of the British Isles, almost as if they were pushed to those locations by invaders coming from the east. And when you look at the history of Britain, invasions of Britain mostly come from the east. So it seems like these eastern newcomers kept on pushing the speakers of this insular Celtic language further and further west. Next slide, please. And to touch on the maritime trade network that was mentioned, this is an article from Land's End to the Levant. Did Britain's tin sources transform the Bronze Age in Europe and the Mediterranean? So what this talks about is the tin trade, right? The tin that was found in the British Isles that facilitated the Bronze Age of that period that we know so famously, right? Because the tin was located in Britain, and it was this tin that needed to be mixed with copper to make the bronze. And there was a trade network. So the Mediterranean world that we are so familiar with, the biblical world that we are so familiar with, that bronze that characterized that time period was sourced from Britain. And these people were not isolated, the British people. Next slide. So actually, the maritime nodes of this tin road are firmly grounded in the archaeological record through shipwrecks containing high purity tin ingots. So you have shipwrecks like Salcombe and the one at Big Berry Bay that mark the British terminus, the British end of this trade. But the eastern nodes, right, the eastern locations such as Uluburun, Cape Galedonia, and Hishuli, Caramel, the shipwrecks provide definitive proof of Levant integrated trade access. So the British Isles were integrated into this Levantine trade axis that stretched from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic fringes. So when you think about the Bronze Age trade network, the intercontinental trade network of the Bronze Age that facilitated the movements of ideas and peoples and syncretic philosophies and religious beliefs and philosophical beliefs, Britain was also a part of that network. And it was actually a key part in that network with its importance in the tin, the tin road and the tin trade. Next slide. So it says, right, there seems little doubt that the Phoenicians, right, so this is speaking to, we're back to ancient and modern Britons. It seems little doubt that the Phoenicians at any rate were here, right? They indeed appear to have been as great navigators as the British ever were. They are said to have crossed the Atlantic and planted a settlement in Florida. Skipping down, they are supposed to have traded at this time with the metal workers of Cornwall, right? So right here in ancient and modern Britons being confirmed again, right? The archaeological record of the tin road, right? The shipwrecks and the archaeological record, the high purity ingots again validate the Victorian era anthropologists specifically on this matter, specifically ancient and modern Britons, right? Noting that there's a Levantine presence in Britain and it's connected to the metalworkers and the trade of mineralogy, right? So I think that's very important. It says the metalworkers of Cornwall and add to have colonized some parts of Ireland. So these peoples also, according to the source, settled and colonized parts of Ireland. So whether the insular Celtic language made it to Britain, right? Whether the Afro-Asiatic and the insular Celtic languages made it through Iberia from those North Africans who migrated into Iberia, then into Britain, or the insular Celtic languages were influenced by trade with Levantine and Semitic peoples via the Tin Road, or the combination of both, right? That the insular Celtic languages were influenced by Afro-Asiatic languages on multiple stratums, from the original Iberian inhabitants bringing it over with their E haplogroup, and then also reinforced by Levantine peoples of the Bronze Age, for an example, Phoenicians, with their interactions with the British people and their trade in the Tin Road. Next slide. So rather than being primitive tribalists, the Scot proper and British aristocracy emerged as a Levant integrated elite. The sustained economic contact shifted power from local tribal configurations toward a Mediterranean aligned aristocracy that governed the trade routes. All right, so these people were not isolated. Next slide. And, right, from this article, groundbreaking DNA findings, scientists from Trinity College Dublin and Queen's University Belfast published new findings. So these are British institutions, published their new findings in the journal, The Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. What they found was that the ancient Irish were not only related to the people of Southern Europe, but that there was a Middle Eastern connection too, right? So the genetics also confirms this connection and movement of peoples from the Middle East into Ireland, into Britain. So this is a genetic reality. In multiple factors, in multiple ways, we have established the movement of Middle Eastern, Levantine, North African, and largely the E haplogroup movement of peoples into Britain, and namely Scotland and Ireland. Interestingly enough, there is an oral tradition that the name Scotia, that Scotland gets its namesake from, Scotia was an Egyptian princess, right? So this is an Afro-Asiatic princess, giving her name to Scotland, being Scotia. So I think this is a very interesting piece of a side note. Here is another interesting side note. With this new knowledge comes a tantalizing explanation of the ape skull in ancient Ireland, and which connects to previously unexplained etymological link to the Tuatha de Danann. And I'm going to explain why that ape skull is important on the next slide. Commonly, the meaning of this mysterious race has been posited as the people of Danu, a mother goddess from Irish mythology. However, the earliest recordings of the Tuatha do not include the last word Danann. So the connection to the Tuatha and this Indo-European goddess is not featured and seen in the earliest recordings. Instead, being described as Tuatha D, or the Tuatha De, right? So in fact, it is only since the 19th century that the current description of the Danu was widely accepted by scholars. So that's a 19th century addition associating the Tuatha with this Indo-European goddess. So perhaps then it is time to look at these people using the new information we now have about their roots, and most importantly, the gods they worshipped and revered. Next slide, please. So even more curious are the overlooked etymological variants of Thoth or Thoth, right? And Thought. So when we look for the phonetic comparisons within Egyptian hieroglyphics, we find very apt descriptions of the Tuatha de Danann's arrival in Ireland. So when you look at the etymological inscriptions, Egyptian hieroglyphs, you can see comparisons or analogs to the description of how the Tuatha came to Scotland. And you have the Thoth Die, which translates to Thoth's crossing. You have the Thoth Dot, translates to Thoth's journey by boat. And you have the Thoth Da, translates as Thoth's storm. And this breakdown is according to Libal Gabala Erin. The Tuatha came to Ireland in dark clouds. Right? So all of the phonetic similarities are in line with the description of these legendary people and how they arrived in Ireland. And Thoth being associated with the baboon is the relevance of the ape skull that was found in Ireland in the areas associated with the Tuatha. So it seems like what they are implying is that Egyptians that were adherents of the spiritual system, or a priesthood of Tahuti, right, called Thoth or Tuatha, right, came there, and one of the religious symbols that they brought with them were apes, because baboons were associated with Thoth. So that's the theory. Next slide. So when we talk about the Phoenicians and these Levantine peoples, there was a material culture that gives us a depiction of their morphology, right? And these squares that are right below the words material culture are from Phoenician settlements in Spain, right? This representing this Levantine trade network that was dominated by the Phoenicians, that facilitated the movement of tin from Britain through mainland Europe into Italy, Greece, and ending at one end at the Levant. So this is the material culture. The coin at the top is of Hannibal. That's a Carthaginian coin, Phoenician descended, North African. So this just gives you a reference for the morphological gradient and different types of phenotypes that were surrounding the Mediterranean, the Levant, and connected to this tin trade and the peoples living in and settling Britain. Next slide. So through the synthesis of maritime, genetic, and linguistic evidence, it confirms that the British Isles were a vital hub of a globalized Afro-Mediterranean network. The maritime tin trade was the catalyst for a synthesis that defined the Bronze Age, creating a civilization that was never isolated, but always in conversation with the Levant and North Africa, and also always having morphological types and genotypes in common with the Levant and North Africa, as all of the sources have revealed. Next slide. So in other places associated with this 10 route, we mentioned the Aegean, right? You have clinal patterns. I repeat, the source is called clinal patterns of human Y chromosomal diversity in continental Italy and Greece are dominated by drift and founder effects. And it says A3A2, which is sometimes called AM13, formerly A3B2, has been found at very low frequency in some Mediterranean islands. So you have this A3B2 haplogroup scattered around Mediterranean islands. But without testing for any specific subclade, haplogroup A has been found in a sample from Greeks from Mytilene on the Aegean island of Lesbos. And we've seen coins from Lesbos for years now, specifically the top one floating around for years. And, researchers have used it as an example for the African morphological presence in Europe. And now, due to this article, we also now have the genetics, right, that are associated with basal African populations that show up on the very island that has coins depicting basal African morphology on it. So we can now make the genetic correlation and correctly identify the morphological types depicted on these coins and why. Next slide. But aside from that, we also know, right, that there were other morphological types in Greece, in the Aegean, creating this gradient. Dr. Lazaridis explained that most of the people who created these civilizations appear to be local, deriving between 62% and 86% of the ancestry from people who introduced agriculture to Europe from Anatolia in Neolithic times, started from about 70,000 years ago. So that's 5,000 BCE. And he's specifically talking about the Mycenaean period, which is a later period of Greek history, as a side note. Next slide. And continuing with this lineage, a study by Lazaridis and others in 2014 demonstrated that modern Europeans can be modeled as an admixture of three ancestral populations. Ancient North Eurasians, these are Yamnaya-related peoples from the Central Eurasian steppe. These are the peoples bringing your blonde hair, your blue eyes, and the very pale skin associated with Nordic and Scandinavian types. Western hunter-gatherers, this is the Cheddar Man and the Oberkassel man, but not the Aurignacian, right? This is a different lineage from the Aurignacian. And then you have the early European farmers. So these would have been peoples coming through from Anatolia, from the Levant, bringing farming with them. These people as well would have been speaking Afro-Asiatic. So you have three substratum of Afro-Asiatic contact dealing with Europe. It was also spoken by these early European farmers coming from Anatolia and the Levant. It was spoken by those Iberians who first inhabited Britain, who were coming from North Africa. And it was spoken by the Levantine traders who were heavily interacting with the people of Britain during the Tin Road. So when you look at the history of Europe and look at the history of Britain, it is not surprising that the oldest Celtic languages, the oldest versions of the Brittonic languages, contain an Afro-Asiatic substratum, because that area was immersed in, colonized by, and in contact with Afro-Asiatic speakers for thousands of years. Next slide. So given the report from the A haplogroup being in Lesbos, given the report from the E haplogroup dominating the Aegean, given the report from Lazaridis about the Indo-European genetics coming in, right? We can see, as well represented by these artifacts here from Greece, that there was a gradient, there was a morphological gradient, a scale, multiple types existed in Greece, in Iberia, in Britain, and they were mixing with each other. So you would find a representation of unmixed types on both ends, and then in between those two different contrasting peoples that are like depicted in these vases, you had the in-between peoples that represented the various scales of admixture, creating a gradient of morphological types in these areas. Next slide. And we can find representations of this gradient all throughout the history. So these are frescoes from the Minoan civilization, which is one of the earliest Greek civilizations documented. And we can see clearly here a morphological gradient, right? Ranging from very dark to black skin on the left-hand side, getting lighter, and then ending up extremely light on the right-hand side. And I feel like this is an excellent representation and accurate depiction of the genetic information we've been, exposing. Next slide. And these peoples, of Crete were known as the Keftiu. And you can see here depictions from two different tombs here of the Keftiu. There is a cartouche there over the captive man on the left-hand side, and it says Keftiu right there in Medu-Neter. These peoples on the right-hand side are peoples from Crete, peoples from the Aegean, Minoans, who are also bringing tribute. And these are both found in different temples in Egypt. The citation is right there. Next slide. And given the information that we've gone over, the genetic documentation, that vase from 525 BC depicts Hercules wrestling the Nemean lion. And you can see Hercules is depicted as an Attic black figure. The Attic black is an art style used on the Greek vases in that time. But right above Hercules is a different Greek person of a different morphological type. So even if you would say that, oh, the blackness of Hercules god energy is a pottery oddity, it's just the style that they depicted it in. Well, on that same pottery, there is a clear depiction of a different morphological type, contrasting two different types of individuals. So I think that's very important. And that continuity of morphology is found in the 1st century Roman painting called Hercules and Telephus, found at the Heraclean. So the person with the X over there, nudity, that is Hercules. And I feel like this picture, and right now is a great point to point out that haplogroup is not a proxy for race either. All of these individuals in that picture could be of the E haplogroup, but we see a difference in morphological type, but they perfectly represent the gradient of morphologies that were in that area and in the larger Mediterranean and all of the areas that we've been talking about. All of those peoples could be of the R haplogroup, right? Representing the gradual change of complexion from the lighter skinned peoples washing out the melanin of the peoples there before. Or all of those people could be of the E haplogroup, right? Representing the lightening of a population as they take wives from the incoming Indo-Europeans. So again, this is a good representation, and I think it's also a perfect point to point out that the art history and these depictions and the lookership scholarship, when we back it up with the genetics, we do have to have a little bit of lookership to actually get an instance of the gradients and morphologies that were there. Because if we did just look at the haplogroups, we wouldn't have a nice, pretty depiction of the gradient of morphologies. So we kind of do need this lookership, the artifacts, the primaries, the firsthand evidence to show us the morphology of who was there. So we're going to continue to show artifacts and primary evidence and these depictions of this morphology. Next slide. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. So when we look at Hercules, this depiction of Hercules from Disney, this is exactly how Herodotus described the Germans, the Germanic peoples, whom he described as an other type. He described the Germans as having a look all onto themselves, meaning the Germans look extremely different from the world that Herodotus was used to amongst his Greek peoples and the famed Ethiopians and Egyptians that they were well familiar with. So when you look at the contrast of these depictions of Hercules, even the version of the rock who is closer still lacks a morphology representative of the Africoid or African continent basal morphology that the original Greeks and Romans depicted Hercules with. In short, even the rock isn't black enough to depict the accuracy of what Hercules' original morphology looked like. Next slide. And aside from the Greeks, a little later on, you have the culture bearers of Italy. And this is a bronze helmet from representing the Villanova culture from around 12,000 to 900 BCE. And it is this early Villanova culture that is the predecessor to the Etruscans that we know of. And this early Villanova culture, they had a wattle and daub hut kind of dwelling style. You can see that these people had burials that had goods buried in them, manufactured goods. So there was a political elite as opposed to a more common class. And then you can see the burials expanding and the religious cemeteries that indicate this period of expansion in the Villanova culture that then flourishes into the early Etruscan culture. Next slide. And early on, and you can see the varying morphological type there. You can see a clear depiction of hinting at a gradient of morphologies there. So it's a range. Europe is not a monolith, right? There is no myth of a purely Indo-European Europe or Indo-European morphology. In Europe, that is a myth. That is pseudo-historiographical. There was always this element there. There was always this melanated element there. There was always this morphological type there. And during the early periods of the Etruscan period, you have the Orientalization period. And this is their contact with the Greeks, Greek colonies, like Pithecusa and Cumae, in the southern parts of Italy. So the Etruscans were influenced by this earlier Greek culture. The Etruscan alphabet, right, was influenced by the Euboean Greeks on the other side of that landmass there on the Aegean side. And the Etruscans had a theogony that was very similar to Hesiod's theogony, where, you know, from the abyss or from the void emerges Uranos and Gaia and Kronos. The Etruscans had a very similar theogony, and like their alphabet was influenced by the Greek theogony, most commonly Hesiod's theogony. Next slide. So they also engaged in trade with the Phoenicians, and it's evident at Vulci, Carve, Terry, and Tarquinia, right? And the Phoenicians colonized Sardinia, which is the larger island off to the left. The top island is Corsica. The larger island slightly to the bottom is Sardinia. And Strabo, in his book Geography, talks about how sailors were afraid to sail near that Tyrrhenian Sea. The Tyrrhenian Sea is that water off the side of Italy there. And sailors were afraid to sail through the Tyrrhenian Sea because of the bands of pirates and barbarians there. So the Etruscans defended this water, fiercely. And actually, they came in conflict with the Greeks eventually, who had a settlement in Corsica. And those Greeks would sack the joint Carthaginian and Etruscan trade routes. So the Etruscans were huge allies to the Carthaginians. So you still see this connection to those Phoenicians they were in strong contact with, right? So in the Orientalization era, this contact with the Phoenicians maintained into military alliances during even the Carthaginian era. You know, so I think it's important that these Etruscans that have this melanated morphological type were allies to the Carthaginians who have this melanated morphological type. both of them, you know, having this cultural diffusion from the Phoenicians, both of them being in conflict with the Greeks and Romans, whom the Greeks and Romans share a similar ethnological background to each other, being Indo-European. So I think it's interesting politically how you have these two different alliances with the Indo-European Greeks and Romans who are tandemly in conflict with the non-Indo-European Etruscans and Carthaginians. I think that's very interesting. And if you want to bring racial lines into it, you can. I would, but I could see why one would shy away from that. Next slide, please. So the Etruscans had a great impact on Italy. Here's a variety of their morphological types. Of course, we know there were Indo-European morphological types there as well. That goes without saying. I feel like that might be implied given its location, but I wanted to put these images up there to highlight the presence and the gradient that most definitely was there and most likely dominated the morphology and phenotypes of this civilization, meaning this was the norm, this intermediate in-between morphology that shares features from both extremes of the gradient. I think the norm was this in-between group of peoples. These peoples, actually the word people comes from the Etruscan language. The word population, the word populace comes from the Etruscan language. The word belt comes from the Etruscan language. The early Roman political structure comes from the Etruscans. And actually, before the Rome had its own republic or own aristocracy, it was ruled by the Tarquin dynasty of the Etruscans. And it was actually when the Latins overthrew the Tarquin dynasty that Rome became its own entity and became, you know, expansionist and led to the Rome that we know today. Next slide, please. And Herodotus, I'm just going to summarize this here because this is very small for me, but he's talking about the Caucians, and he's talking about how the Caucians, he feels, are Egyptians. And he says that the Caucians are Egyptians in his view, not just because they have dark skin and woolly hair. So he's describing their morphological type. He's saying that he believes that they are Egyptians because, like the Egyptians and Ethiopians, the Caucians practiced circumcision. And it was the Egyptians and Ethiopians who had practiced circumcision since the oldest times. And it's through the Caucians that the Phoenicians and Syrians learned circumcision. But what I feel is interesting, next slide, sa.neter, is that the Caucians are in Georgia, right? So this is the Caucasus area. So this black group of peoples that Herodotus thinks might be planted there by the Egyptians, some Egyptian movement, this is in the area of Georgia. This is in the Caucasus region, right? So this is near Anatolia. This is near Turkey. And to this day, you have a black indigenous population there known as the Abkhazians. So in this area, that is an Abkhazian gentleman depicted right there. In this area, to this day, there is still a presence of this morphological type in current times, which was documented all the way in the Hellenistic era during the time of Herodotus as the Caucians. Next slide. The Caucians play a key role in Greek mythology because it is amongst these Caucians where Jason had to retrieve the golden fleece from the work called the Argonautica about Jason and the Argonauts. He teams up with Hercules. He gets a blessing from the goddess, and he goes on this quest to retrieve the golden fleece from the kingdom of Caucasus. Well, Herodotus describes these Caucians as being as black as Egyptians, actually him thinking the Caucians were Egyptians. So the golden fleece that Jason used to defeat Medusa was housed amongst these Caucians. Next slide. And this is in the area of Georgia, right? So if you take a look here at this map, we've talked about Africans going into Iberia, and those same dark-skinned Iberians going into Britain. And then we talked about, you know, the E haplogroup going into Italy, and the Levantine traders going into Britain. So we have all of this movement of peoples, the Caucians, right, over on the right-hand side of this map, over near the Caucasus in Georgia. So we've talked about a bunch of places on here already, and the genetics, the C haplogroup, the E haplogroup, the A haplogroup, that all would have been bringing melanated peoples or morphologically African phenotypes into various parts of Southern and Northern Europe. But there was another cultural vehicle, even on top of that, another stratum, another anthropological data point that would have aided or added to the dispersion of African morphological types into the European world. And this map represents the sites of Isis worship. And it is the temple of Isis, right? The cult of Isis that would have brought more African morphology into these areas in Europe. And this map here, every little dot shows instances of Isis worship. And I added a circle all the way at the top there in Britain. I added a circle there at the top near Britain because there are 2 to 3 dots up there near York as well. So again, with a focus on Britain, even the cult of Isis, right, would have had its reach and its hand in dispersing specifically Nile Valley Africans into the Greek world. Next slide, please. And here is a fresco from Pompeii depicting the Egyptians that would have been the administrators of the cult of Isis, of these temples of the cult of Isis. And you can see the gradient and the difference of the morphological types there. So on top of all of the indigenous and aboriginal morphologically African peoples that we've talked about so far through the tin trade, the insular Celtic languages, the movement of Africans into Iberia, the Uber Man, Cheddar Man, so on and so forth. The cult of Isis in this late Hellenistic and early classical era would have added another swath and stratum of Black presence in Europe. And the movie Pompeii there shows a brother with this morphology standing next to the main character. And this fresco is from Pompeii. And I feel like the brother from this cover art here morphologically represents what accurately would have been the gradient and peoples walking around in Pompeii, given this Isis fresco here as a primary source. Next slide. Adding to that is the genetic evidence. And we're going to look at the phylogenetic study called Y chromosome sequence variations and the history of human populations by Underhill and others. Haplogroup A3B2, which we mentioned earlier with the Lesbos coins, also has been observed in another sample of South Sudanese populations at a frequency of 45%. And actually, it is of the Sudanese, specifically the Dinka Sudanese, that carry the largest percentage of the A3B2 haplogroup on the planet, right? So this A3B2 haplogroup is firmly associated with the Southern Sudanese types, but it's also been observed and found in low frequencies in a random sample of Egyptian males at 39%. That's almost 40%. That's nearly half, right? So, and this was just a random sample set of Egyptians. So when you look at the Isis cult and it being staffed by these Egyptian males, and most of these Egyptian males being of the African E haplogroup, but also as shown right here, also of the even more basal African clade, the A haplogroup. Right. So I think these are great examples of how the cultic institution of the cult of Isis also aided in the dispersal of morphological types not associated with Indo-Europeans or Yamnaya type peoples. So basically the spread of Black people. Next slide. And more on the cult of Isis. This is from the work called The Effects of Greco-Romanization on the Worship of Isis. And right here, it's talking about the worship of Isis was eventually was eventually picked up by the Emperor Caligula, who was related to Vespasian and Titus. I'm just going to summarize here and let you guys read this because I want to move on to the coin. But basically, Vespasian, Titus, the Flavians, right, were heavy into the cult of Isis. They were supporters of the cult of Isis, patrons of the cult of Isis, also with the cult of Serapis. And we know Serapis was the Greek replacement for Osiris. So what originally started off as Isis and Osiris worship, under the Greeks turned into Isis and Serapis worship. Almost them forcing this interracial relationship between the deities, one might say. But the pivotal role that the Flavians played in early Christianity, I think, is highly relevant here. And this is what I want to talk about. Because on that coin there that was minted in Alexandria during the Roman period, right, it's a depiction of Isis and Harpocrates, a figure called Harpocrates. Harpocrates is the Hellenized word of Heruparkerid, right? So it's this character, Harpocrates, that appears in the cult of Isis that is supposed to be some sort of representation of Heru, right? Specifically Heruparkerid. But in this period, Harpocrates is sometimes called Carpocrates, which means master of the which means master of the harvest. So this is a common name because Harpocrates was associated with the cult of Isis, right? It was a name associated with the cultic practice. Parents would name their child Harpocrates and Carpocrates. In Alexandria, Egypt, in 100 of the Common Era, there was a theologian born named Carpocrates. Carpocrates, along with Basilides and Valentinus, is one of the earliest Christian theologians and philosophers, right? So, Valentinus is associated with Gnosticism. Carpocrates is also associated with Gnosticism, associated with those early forms of Christianity that was synthesizing Egyptian practices, Neoplatonist practices, and Pythagorean type practices. So all of this Hellenizing of the tradition. Right. So and Carpocrates, none of Carpocrates, the theologian, none of his work survived, but Carpocrates had a son named Epiphanes, and Epiphanes' work on justice is quoted by Clement in Alexandria. Right. So the cult of Isis also brings us to the root. This cult of Isis that would have been responsible for disseminating Black people into Europe, Africans into Europe, is also central to the history of Christianity, right? And also disseminating African thought, philosophy, and theology into Christianity through the cult of Isis, and one of the representations being the carrying of this title, Harpocrates, Heruparked, into Carpocrates, the early Christian theologian. Next slide, please. But this brings us firmly into the Roman era and back to ancient and modern Britons. Remember, we're following a timeline here. So for all of the student teachers following along, I hope y'all have been keeping track of the chronology that I've been walking you through as well. So right now we've gone from the Paleolithic time in 47,000 BCE, and I have smoothly walked you through the chronology to the first century and second century of the Common Era during the Roman period. So Professor Huxley, speaking on this subject, says that probably in the time of Caesar, and certainly in that of Tacitus, there existed in these islands two distinct types of population. The one of tall stature with fair skin, yellow hair, and blue eyes. The other of short stature with dark skin, as dark as an Ethiopian's, says Pliny, as dark as a Moor's, says Claudian. Dark hair and dark eyes. So these early peoples of Britain were described by Pliny as Ethiopians, by Claudian as Moors. And we know there is no ambiguity when you're using an Ethiopian as a morphological type. And therefore, it should clear up any ambiguity when we're talking about Moors as a morphological type in this context specifically. And it says, this darker population represented by the Silures bore considerable physical resemblance to the people of Aquitania and Iberia. So we've already gone over the genetic evidence that shows that Iberians, people from the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, migrated into Britain 6,000 years ago. So again, that genetic study confirms again the Victorian era anthropologists of David McRitchie and others on this topic specifically. And it says these two distinct ethnological evidence, continues Mr. Huxley, probably coexisted in these islands when the country was discovered by the Romans. And it definitely was, right? Because we've cited all of the tin trade that went on there, the migrations of these Africans to Spain, into Britain. We've talked about the E haplogroup and the PN2 clade and the EV13 clade. So we've talked about all of this movement of peoples into Britain, and firmly showing that the source, ancient and modern Britons, when they're talking about at the time of Caesar, there being two distinct morphological and ethnological racial types being there, we have already well documented through the genetics, through the maritime, through the linguistic evidence that yes, that was the case. Next slide. But at any rate, the people known as Iberians, right, were spread all over the British Islands, whether indigenous or immigrants, and some of their tribes were known as the Domnani and Silures. They were swarthy of color, just like the genetic evidence suggests, had curly hair, and were bearded like goats. They, or some clans of them, worshiped the gods, and both men and women professed a knowledge of the future. So you can see they were, egalitarian in their spiritual system. So then the Druids and Druidesses, who had colleges in an island near the coast of Brittany, who professed a knowledge of the future, who, the men at least, were figured as bearded like goats, like those swarthy Iberians, and who worshiped the gods, were dark-skinned, curly-haired Iberians of the tribe of Silures or Domnani, maybe. This seems a fair inference. Next slide. And it says, the Iberians are styled swarthy and curly-haired. The word swarthy is rather elastic, for although literally Schwarz, yet it is taken, I fancy, to mean something not quite as dark as the color of a Negro in its usual acceptation. But perhaps this distinction does not exist. But at any rate, if the small dark Highlander and the black Celt to the west of the Shannon be assumed to be the descendants of Iberians, then it may fairly be argued that with so much intermixture with fairer races, again, this intermixing, right, is what is erasing this morphological type from existence, from the record, from our view. With so much intermixing with fairer races during the last 2,000 years, it's only been 2,000 years of this fairer race being on the scene, mixing in this area, the stock must now be lighter skinned than then. And its representatives of the first century, this is the era when Caesar was coming in and colonizing Britain in the first centuries, must have been actually as black as Negroes. So they're talking about these tribes, peoples of Britain. When Rome first showed up, there was definitely people there, quote unquote, as black as Negroes, as the source says. So when you talk about swarthy as it pertains to this temporal range, they are talking about people, quote unquote, as black as Negroes. So it says, a matter of fact, Pliny characterizes their complexion as Ethiopium. Again, they're referencing Pliny again. That is, as black as an Ethiopian. And it may be that the curliness of their hair was of the same nature as Negroes also. Thus, the Negritos of Huxley, the owners of skulls, as those found in Katniss, may have been allied to the ancient Iberians. That the wild tribes of Ireland were black men is hinted by the fact that a wild Irishman in Gaelic is a black Irishman, Dub Irenek. Right? So they're now even talking about how in Ireland, the morphological type associated with the wild Irishman, the indigenous Irishman, is the black Irishman, the Dub Irenek. Next slide. So adding even another stratum on top of that, right? So we're moving from the 1st century. Now we're going to go to the 600s AD, right? And under criteria, we see location, social context, known relatives, and genetic ancestry, right? And we're going to be looking at those classifications for one, the Upton girl found in Kent, and then the Dorset male found in southern England in Dorset. So for the Upton girl, she was buried near a Kentish royal center, right? She was buried in a family plot. She was buried with goods, finished goods. So it implies some sort of high status, or at least social stratification. She was integrated into the social society. She was buried with a grandmother nearby, aunt, great grandfather on the maternal side, but on her paternal line, it shows she had 30 to 50% West African paternal lineage. And this showed that her grandfather was 100% West African. And the West African population groups that she showed affinity with were the Asan people and the Mandi people and Yoruba and Mandinka people. Right. So this was an Upton girl who was fully integrated into the society, who had recent West African ancestor. Her grandfather came from West Africa, or at least himself came from an unmixed West African population and intermarried into this non-African family lineage, whom this little girl was buried with. But she wasn't marginalized. She was fully integrated into the society. When you look at the male, the Dorset individual from the last column, he was buried on the southern coast of Dorset. He shared a grave with an unrelated local individual, a male who I believe was considerably older than him. No relatives were found, but when his genome was sequenced, he also had recent, specifically West African ancestry. And he was buried using an anchor as a pillow, showing his connection to the maritime trade there. So this individual represents a foreign trade person who happened to die there and was buried there during his time there. But what both of these individuals represent is that even up to the time of the 600s, we've firmly established that the local population, the indigenous population, the base population of the people of Britain and Europe were of a morphological type that represented or reflected Africoid peoples and dark-skinned Southern Asian peoples like Melanesians and Australians. That's been firmly documented. But even up until this point in the 600s AD, whether it be an African-related girl who was integrated into the society, or if it was an African boy who was simply there from trade, there were multiple cultural contexts that brought African peoples and Africoid morphology into Europe, into Britain, even at the time of the 600s. And after 600s AD, we know what wave is about to hit after that when you talk about the 700s to 1492, right? So even before that big wave that comes in the 700s, in the 600s, you have people with strong recent African ancestry in the Upton girl and the Dorset individual, showing multiple cultural factors that would bring Africans into Britain still, even in the 600s AD. So there has not been a time period where Britain and Western Europe was devoid of morphological types that had either been there ancestrally or are keep coming in influx and migrating in cultural diffusion. Next slide. So moving further northward, right, the genetic diversity of the Scots, looking, this is the northern areas of Britain. And these here represent different genetic studies, different case studies done by different individuals. The names are there attached to the different case studies, numbered 1 through, I believe, 7. And the different case studies for the genetic profiles are designated by different colors on here. So you have slightly different genetic profiles represented by these different colors, like the north and the purple representing north, green being Scots, blue being Picts, red being Angles, orange being Britons, and so on. But what I want to point out, interestingly enough, in our conversation about the makeup of these peoples in Scotland is the green used for Scots and the blue used for Picts, right? Because in our morphological discussion, this color green and blue is actually going to play a part in this description with these peoples. Next slide, please. And it's because of the tradition of woad, or the painting of the peoples with this color. And we're going to get into it. The British Picts, like those of other lands, stand out again as dark-skinned men, right? So from the map before, we could see that the Picts are a foundational population in Scotland, right? And it says complementary witness with moros is gorm, right? So when you talk about moros, this term associated with melanated people, gorm is a complementary term with that. And it says this term gorm was attached to the name of Highland and other chiefs and kings. This word is given in Gaelic dictionaries as signifying blue of whatever shade, also green as grass. And this recalls the fact that the indigenous tribes described by Caesar, so when the Caesar got there in the 1st century, these Picts were described as verides, or green, like verde, and ceruli, like blue, or like the word cerulean. So from the woad, so it's this woad that was termed blue or green. From the woad with which they stain their bodies, the color of which may come under either of these headings. Accordingly, when one looks again into the Gaelic dictionary, one finds that gorman is woad. So when you have woad being signified as blue or green, the paint on you, you're often referred to as gorman as well. So when you are painted with woad, you are also referred to as a gorman. Next slide. So it says, now, although in Gaelic Scotland, a Negro is known as Dwyn Dub, a black man, he is known in the Gaelic of Ireland as Dwyn Gorm, a blue, green, or woad stained man. So a black man in Gaelic Ireland is called Dwyn Gorm, and we know Gorm was synonymous with woad. So these woad men are synonymous with black men. And it says, and while in the Scottish Highlands, the adjective glass is used to signify both swarthy and green, right? So glass is now associated with skin color as well as the color woad, and woad and glass now are both associated with green. So in Wales, it has the meaning of green or blue. So in the latter country in Gaelic, gorm here spelled gorm is equivalent to brown. So you have all of this interplay between being swarthy, the color brown, green, gorm, blue, woad. So it says, except for the Pt.1, that a brown-skinned man and a woad-colored man were one and the same. So it says, what possible explanation for all of this apparent confusion of terms can there be, except that the Pt.1, that a brown-skinned man and a woad-colored man were one and the same? So on the last slide, that later depiction of a Picty, that is not a contemporary depiction of a Picty, right? That depiction from the last slide of the man with blue coloring on him does not date from the time of the Picty. Neither does my depiction here, right? But my depiction here of this individual Pictish warrior of northern Britain circa 3rd century is more accurate to the anthropological descriptions of these people. Next slide. So, characters that we can associate with these groups, right? History knows him sometimes as Kenneth, sometimes as Dub, and sometimes as Niger, right? The version of the Pictish Chronicle in the Irish Nennius calls him Sinead Vel Dub, and Saint Brecken styles him Dub of the 3 black divisions, right? So this guy Dub, also termed Niger, we know what etymology that comes from. We know what that's signifying and getting at, right? This man Dub, Kenneth Dub, was also the head of 3 different black divisions. So he is not an anomaly in this area as well, right? He is the head of different divisions of people that represent him morphologically. The Picts seem to have preserved a tradition that the whole nation was once divided into 7 provinces. And it would appear that the 3 black divisions over which Dub or the Black held sway formed that portion of the original 7, which still remained untouched by the white races. So it's describing how there has been a homogeneity that has been maintained by these black divisions that hadn't been untouched by peoples that were of the opposite morphology. In short, the Pictish provinces he seems to have been constantly at war with, Sulian and Caniculus, the young dog, who is called Fionn or White by Saint Brecon or Birkin, and eventually White succeeded in driving Black out of the country and reigning in his stead for more than 20 years after. So we see here this this duality, this tradition, this habit of styling one group Black, one group white, and them being at odds with each other, there being tension, them being in competition with each other for hegemony. This is part of the story. And I think this is part of the race relations that we later inherited in the colonial era, the British colonial era, the American colonial era. I think the seeds of that racial tension and oppression was sown during this period. Next slide. And it says, Scotland was overrun in one district by Moors of the 15th century. But 5 centuries earlier, the kings of Alban were Moors. And one of the most celebrated of these, Kenneth or Niger or Dub, ruled over certain districts known as the 3 black divisions. Skipping down, but at any rate, the Moorish race, Nakfosu nomin Pictos, were among the chief opponents of the Romans when they marched through Britain 1800 years ago. So again, the source is still trying to reiterate that when the Romans came here, they would have been fighting against Black indigenous British peoples, who later would have been fallen under the designation of Picti or Picts, right? They are remembered in many a tradition of the days when Christendom was battling against heathenness. They were ultimately overcome, and as separate and distinct nations, they no longer exist. So they were conquered. They were overrun. Next slide. And Mel Gibson in the movie Braveheart, he was a Pict. Right, he was a Pictish descended person, and you can see that blue. Right, he has the woad on him. That blue that Mel Gibson has on his face is the woad. Right, that woad-stained man we know is a Dwayne Gorm or a black man. So it says, what may be called genealogical evidence of the existence of black skin races existing in Scotland within history's time has already been adduced in considering the Moors. And it is difficult to decide whether the examples given ought to be styled Picts, so-called, or Danes, because both were Picts and contemporaries. And the very district which still bears the name of the ancient Moray men was also the very district in which the Danes lingered longest, that is, excluding the Isles, right? So the Danes are also synonymous with Picts, but also the area that are associated with the Danes, where they held out the longest, is associated with Moors or Moray men, right? So there's an association with dark-skinned individuals that's being implied here, for which reason it had become the hunting ground for the fair-skinned victors. Again, talking about this battle, this stress, this competition, right? This rivalry between the darker-skinned inhabitants of Britain and the fairer-skinned victors, descendants of Ferskine the Fleming, right? And Berowold the Fleming, founder of the powerful Innes family. and others of kindred race. Therefore, when a black man is discovered on a family tree of 1,000 years ago, he may be either a Dane or a Pict. Of those, however, who are better known by the former name, there may be specified an ancestor of the Macleods or MacLeod, right? That family being held to be the descendants at that date of Martin's visit to Western Islands from Lloyd, son to the Black Prince of Man, which island was for a long time under the rule of the Danes, right? So this ancestor Lloyd, who was son to the Black Prince of Man, that island was a stronghold of the Danes. So you see this blackness associated with Danish territory. So the father of this Lloyd was in all probability Olaf Svarti, or Olaf the Swarty, right? Mentioned in the Flatian manuscripts, who was the king of Man. So that manuscript is another primary that we could reference. Next slide. And in the movie and the show Vikings here, you know, it's about these Scandinavian type people. So let's see how they are described and how they fit into this story. These two sections of invaders were also known as Finn Genti and Dub Genti, white Gentiles and black Gentiles, clearly speaking to the two different contrasting morphological types that have been there. And as according to Armstrong, Fionn Lachlaners and Dub Lachlaners, white and black Lachlaners, or Scandinavians. So you had black Scandinavians and white Scandinavians. Ragnar the Fearless and all of his, and the sons of Ragnar would not have been just purely Proto-Indo-European descended, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, SLC gene-carrying individuals. There were black Scandinavians as well. And in the wars of the Gael and the Gael, or the Gaels and the Gauls, the Denari are styled black Dinars or black Danes. In none of these terms is there any hint that the color of the hair is indicated. So you can't use that as an anachronistic excuse to try to excuse away the morphological reality being described here, because in none of these terms is there any hint that the color of the hair is indicated. He calls them the Gentiles of pure color. The Danes then were not of pure color. They were dub, black, as black at any rate as the black Huns, who were of dark complexion, almost black. So finally, it says, there can be no question about it. The designation given by the common people of one race to another is almost invariably founded upon some physical feature, and the most natural distinction is that of color. So what he's saying is that it's common sense that all of these people being called black and white and black this and black that and white this and white that, these people are calling each other these things because of the most obvious observable physical feature that people use as a distinction, which is the color. Next slide. So it says, whether we look therefore at the Danes of history or at the people who today have the best claim to be regarded as their descendants, we see before us men of swarthy skin. Men of swarthy skin. So when you look at the time of the author, when you looked at people associated with the Danes and their descendants, there were men of swarthy skin, the author is saying. So it says, so that in Wales, as in Scottish Highlands, an immense number of people who believe themselves to be Celts and who are full of enthusiasm on the subject of the Celt language, which they regard as the immemorial speech of their forefathers, are in actual fact descendants of Flemings and Normans. So this slide right here is very important, and the tapestry associated with this is a tapestry depicting William the Conqueror and the Norman invasion of the early 11th century. So these are what the Normans look like. right? And the descendants of these Normans are who are the modern individuals that claim this Celtic lineage. But the source is saying right here that when you look for the real ancestors or the real descendants of the Danes, you find swarthy skinned people, and the non-swarthy skinned people who think they are related to the Danes are really Flemings and Normans. They are descendants of French, Flemings, and Normans. And that's why there is a movement in Britain today called Not Celtic, because it is becoming a known reality to those individuals that they are not related to the original indigenous Celtic peoples, those Celtic peoples whose language has close affinity with Afro-Asiatic. So I think it's interesting that in light of this Afro-Asiatic connection of the oldest Celtic language pointing to a non-Indo-European morphology, the modern Indo-European descendants are also acknowledging they are not related to those peoples as well. Next slide. So this is not hood rhetoric that I am feeding you here. Right? This is completely corroborated with genetic sources all the way from the Paleolithic era. I've rooted this in genetics. Even the modern British populations, they are acknowledging their separation from the Celtic lineage and heritage. So the Outlaw King here, which follows the tale of Robert the Bruce and their conflict against the English crown, right? The Bruces, the Wallaces, the Stuarts, and many other lesser names were Normans and Flemings, right? They are French. Robert the Bruce, this Scottish hero, the Stuart family, the famous Stuart family of King James Stuart, who wrote the Bible. They're Normans and Flemings. And King James, who wrote the Bible, his ancestor, who's circled right there on the right-hand side, he was also named Sir James. And the source says here, the good Sir James, the most loyal of all Bruce's knighthood, boasted its ancient Aboriginal blood that bore a surname which signified the black man. Right? So even though it's saying that the Stuarts were not Pictish, they were these French, Norman, Flemings, that Sir James and his relatives, the Stuarts, did boast black blood. And it says he himself was of a black and swart complexion, according to Godscroft, for which cause he was known to his foes as the Black Douglas. So even though the source is saying that the modern Proto-Indo-European peoples that claim Celtic ancestry, they are really descended from French Normans. So, and the depictions of William the Conqueror is of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Proto-Indo-European descended peoples. This source is also implying that swarthy, melanated Normans and Flemings worked with the non-melanated Proto-Indo-European type Normans and Flemings. And it's stating that James Stuart, the ancestor of King James who wrote the Bible, was one of these swarthy complexion Normans and Flemings, according to Godscroft, right? So whoever this Godscroft person is, this is the source that calls the ancestor of the Bible King James swarthy, and associates him with the term Black Douglas. So the Stuarts are associated with the Black Douglases. Next slide. And that is a Danish artifact right there. That is one of the only surviving Danish helmets, Viking helmets. And you can see it has a lack of horns. That is a misnomer that Viking or Danish helmets were featured with horns. But the reason of the phrase clinging to that particular district may be traced to the fact that the Danes of Northumbria belong to the branch of the Northmen called Dubgail or Dub Genti, that is Black Stranger, right? And it is probably owing to this, a lowland Scot and an Englishman were also Dubgail to the white skin race of Highlanders who oppressed them. So this all throughout this source here, when it's talking about the black presence in Scotland and the white presence in Scotland and their interactions between each other, the political interactions, the social interactions, the relationship between the black population of Britain and the white population of Britain, it is always conflict. It is always tension. Right? It is always a competition for hegemony. Me versus you, my team versus your team, the Bulls versus the Celtics, no pun intended. So thus, the legends and the history of the Scottish Highlands are both witness to the existence of purely black people. I repeat, thus, the legends and the history of the Scottish Highlands are both witness to the existence of purely black people. The Welsh traditions bear a similar testimony. The hero Peredur, son of Aerfwick, discovers a company of bald, swarthy youths. Next slide. So let's dig into this chronicle actually of Peredur, right? In the Middle Welsh and Middle English romance, such as Peredur fab Aefwic, an evil duke known as the Black Oppressor kills men, imprisons their ladies at a castle. The knight Peredur, or Percival, is tasked with killing him. Often after the oppressor has already been weakened or defied by earlier heroes. The Black Knight of Castle Maiden. So various stories feature a Black Knight, right, who controls a territory. And that territory is often a black fort or black tower and acts as an oppressor by holding ladies captive or killing them or killing challengers. Right. So you can see this term of the Black Knight, right? It's not made ambiguous by armor or demeanor, right? He's a dark, mysterious figure, and that's why he's called black. But he's not from a dark or mysterious tower in a dark or mysterious fort or castle, right? These are these ethnic distinguishers, and put it in the linguistic and cultural context of all of the other usage of black and dub and swarthy and gorm and woad and dween dub and dub irenek, right? We can see the cultural matrix that this springs forth from, and that they are not talking about a person of a black demeanor or a black personality. They are talking about black people. They are talking about a black ethnic group, and they are talking about lands and structures associated with these black individuals. Next slide, please. And we're coming on the home stretch, family. Thank you for bearing with me. We're coming down to the wire. This is the home stretch. Oh, nah, Sai, you went back. Go up. Yeah, to that King Arthur joint. Yep, right there. So sticking with the Welsh, right? The Welsh tale, it has been said, are full of black giants against whom the Arthurian warriors fought. And they're not talking about the black temperament giants, right? These giants didn't have a black temperament. These were black giants. And it says, because of the blackness of their foes would not have been particularized had they been of the same hue themselves. So now the Arthur of history is said to have been of swarthy Silurian blood, right? So when you look at who the person that the legend of King Arthur is based off of, he does come from a population associated with the Silurian peoples who were associated with the swarthy Iberian migrants to Britain. But how the legend is used as propaganda throughout European history, the Arthurian warriors are always pitted against these black oppressors. It is the Arthurian warriors who are meant to be the champions, freeing the people from these black giants, these black oppressors. And their enemies, who are usually styled the heathen, are seen in the Welsh traditions to be black. That is, they were black heathen, like the Dane or like the Moor. So now we also see an analogy to Danes, Moors, these black heathens, black oppressors, the Black Douglas, all of these peoples whom the Arthurian legend are galvanizing to fight against. Again, so this is a text and piece of propaganda making the people enthusiastic about overthrowing or being combative or being violent towards the black population of Britain. Similar to Jake Paul and what he's doing right now in boxing. Next slide, please. And continuing on about this legend of King Arthur, the two great types appear as enemies, like I was just saying, and a great number of the legendary instances preserves the memory of this mutual enmity. That's why I said the roots of the racial tension and conflict that we see in colonial America, those seeds were sown here. The reason why we were treated so torturously and with such vitriol was because there had already been hundreds of years of this grudge of being seen as enemies, hundreds of years of this enmity that this European population had towards whom they viewed as Black oppressors. So it says, the black giants of the Welsh and other tales are hateful and horrid. The Welsh black oppressor and the Black Knight of Lancashire are fierce tyrants, the cruel foes of all white people. And you can compare that to the image of the black man in media today, how we are always the criminal, we are always the threat, we are always the one that you need to overcome and conquer and watch out for, right? The image of the black man is completely mirrored in how the image of the black oppressor was in the Arthurian legend, showing a continuity of the motifs in the propaganda tools, whether it be the Arthurian legend or whether it be some TV show or movie depicting a black man as a thug to be feared. So this is the importance of learning this history. Not just saying black, y'all, we was black, y'all, Europe was blackity, black, blah, black. No, right? It has socioeconomic implications. It has societal and social implications. There is a lesson to be learned here. So it says the blacks were cut up into straggling bands, like the Black Morrow of Galloway. Further down, the blacks were the dreaded enemies of the whites. Further down, the days of the black oppression are so remote that their memory only lives in half-forgotten legends. Half-forgotten legends. Next slide. But the sentiment from those legends still continues. That drive that was set forth from those legends to dominate, to make sure that they are never oppressed by us again, continues. The fact that the aristocracy of this race were great nobles possessed of lands and dignities in France. They're talking about the black strangers, the black oppressors. The fact that the aristocracy of this race of black strangers, black Douglases, were great nobles possessed of lands and dignities in France as well as in their own country, the leading figures in Scotland for several generations, and almost the occupants of its throne, this fact in no way affects the ethnological deduction just arrived at. Therefore, to a certain section of the peasantry of Galloway, presumably those of Norman, Flemish, and Celtic blood, the Black Douglas was simply a swarthy tyrant, like the black oppressor of Welsh tradition, or that other Black Knight recorded by Halliwell. Next slide, please. And it says the Scots of Galloway, like the Moors of Morayshire, are seen rising up in rebellion against Norman barons. So the Scots of Galloway, these black strangers, these black Douglases, also had a common enemy as the Moors of Morayshire. These Normans, the Normans were an adversary to the Moors and to those Scots of Galloway, those black Douglases, the same way that the Greeks and Romans were enemies to the Etruscans and Carthaginians. So you see clearly alliances made on racial and ethnological lines. This is the story of alliances, hegemony, and the competition for resources in society. And instead of us taking a position of weakness from having been victims and excluded from that arena that everyone else normally lives in, we need to educate ourselves to get our head in the game, learn our context, and compete instead of trying to convince everyone else who is normally competing on the world stage to not do what is normal for the sake of us who had been removed from normacy during the slavery. So the Battle of Bannockburn then was not won by Scots proper alone, but by a greatly mixed multitude of which they formed a part, and none among them of whatever race excited that famous Scot excelled that famous Scot, the Black Douglas. It would be difficult to find a better example of the Scot proper, right? So this Black Douglas, this Black stranger, is seen as an example of the Scot proper. He belonged to the oldest sept of his clan, that known as the Black Douglases, a term which proves to be tautological when analyzed, since Douglas signifies the Black swarthy man. And this is all that remains of the house that stood on the site of Douglas Castle. And this was a 17th century tower. So 1600s, this tower was built. Next slide. So the Black Douglas clans themselves were black-skinned. So now they're just outright saying it in the source, right? Because their first authentic appearance coincides with the time when the barrier between black and white had been broken down in many places, and the two opposite types had greatly intermingled. This movement is seen in their own history, which tells of intercourse, political and matrimonial, between them and such white races as the Normans and Flemings. Eventually, this tendency resulted in the disappearance of the pure Black Douglas from place and power. So this intermingling and intermarrying, these interracial relationships, resulted in the disappearance of this Black population. So we can see that in our condition of being hung, being shot, being abused, being spit on, being raped, being kidnapped, being tortured, right? As long as that's not happening, we are happy. But that is us settling for less. That is us enjoying one extreme out of being tired of another extreme. So the interracial relationship, as being cited here, causes and leads to the disappearance of a population just as much as a hard-kill genocide. So it seems like a pivot that can be made if a population wanted to get rid of a certain demographic. You can commit a hard-kill genocide and try to imprison them, mass incarceration, brutality, execute them unlawfully, or you can cause their disappearance through this tendency that results from interracial relationships, right? So if I want to oppress a people, if I want to marginalize a people, if I want to make a demographic disappear, interracial relationships is also part of the game plan. It is also a tool in the tool belt of oppressor trying to maintain and marginalize a demographic. Next slide. And it says, but the traces of our black ancestry are visibly existent in 100 surnames. Some of these denote complexion, others do so, but indirectly. There is the clan Rory and Dougal, spelt Dubgale, or black strangers. There are all the variants of Dub, black, such as Duff, Dow, McDuff, and others. There are Dons, Cars, and Dargs, with their equivalent Duns, Browns, Grays, and Blacks. So Dub can be found in other forms in surnames like Duff, Dow, McDuff, Don, Dunn, right? So it says, all these are color names showing a black or tawny ancestor. And moving down, it says, such color agnomines as these are very common in early history, and they point clearly to an era when greatly differing races were encountering each other, now struggling for the mastery and peacefully intermarrying. So you can see when the struggling and the killing and the warring subsided, that Black population was further disappeared by intermarrying. And the peace that comes with fornication makes one think this is better, this is different. But the outcome of those interracial relationships still ends up in the erasure of that Black population. So even though you can take solace in the fact that at least they're not killing me, at least they're not calling me the N-word, the results of that intermarrying still results in your demographic not existing anymore, which is the same results that would have happened if they would have continued to hang you. So they can either hang you with a rope or genetically hang you. And I don't think we should take solace in the lack of violence that comes with interracial relationships. They are just as dangerous as any other tool of oppression. Next slide. So in the movie Black Knight with Martin Lawrence, she travels back to medieval Europe. And in the script, in the dialogue, when he's being addressed, he's called a Moor, right? And part of the script, it says, "You will do well to mind your tongue, Moor, or I will cut it out and feed it to the dogs." And it says, Martin goes, "Ain't she fine? Watch me work." And the man replies, "Moor, do you mock me? The king awaits thee, messenger. You might want to take a chill pill, all right?" And the guy goes, "Do you mock me, Moor?" Martin continues, "Who's backing you, Puffy?" And the guy goes, "Silence, Moor." So this term Moor is applied to people that would have had this aboriginal and long-standing dark morphology, dark skin and phenotypes, but we also know the term Moor would later become associated with Islamic incomers from North Africa. To the next and final slide, please. The Maori of Mauritania are perhaps the most notable example of a nation bearing this name, though in a slightly altered shape. Moving down, it says, a branch of this family did inhabit Britain and are not only known as Maori and Moors, but also Moravienses or Moravianese, identical with the names of those in India. Murray men and people of Moray or Moravia. And like we saw in the earlier slide, Danish people are associated with this area as well. Swarthy skin is associated with this area as well. That the Picts known to the Romans as Mori were finally divided into two sections inhabiting these localities is a speaking fact, which it is well to remember at this juncture. The smaller district in the south has been the name father of a family distinguished in Scottish history, the Murrays. The Murrays. And one of the estate of this clan bore the significant name of the Black Barony, keeping in line with the Black Knight, the black figure being associated with a black castle, a black tower, a black fort. And you can see these Murrays from Maori men or Maori, Moor, are associated with the Black Barony. So in conclusion, we've gone from 40,000 years ago, hunter-gathering peoples, cave painting peoples that was black, all the way up to the Middle Ages with these Picti, these Danes, these Maori men, these black Douglases, these black strangers, right? So we have laid down multiple stratums of blackness in Europe, the A haplogroup, E haplogroup, C haplogroup, from the Etruscans to the Greeks to Black Hercules to the Iberians moving up into Britain. There was blackness all over Europe, and it seems like in reality, right, the blackness of Europe was the standard, and it is only in the past 4,000 years that has changed morphologically. So thank you. That concludes the presentation.
Man, you already broke it down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I love about your teachings, brother, is that you remind me of a college professor. The way you go in, it's like teaching your class, and the way you break it down, and you make sure you read every word, and you give the sources. So I wanted to say that before any inclination of hate come towards your way.
I appreciate that.
No pseudo killers. I love you too, man. Don't worry about it. Yeah, my people, man. So I ain't got to show no hate. Let me open up the phone lines. Not the phone lines, but
Oh yeah.
let me open up the floodgates and see what kind of pushback or add on do we have.
I'm interested to what the Hebrew Israelites gotta say, because part two of this is dedicated to the Israelites, low key.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie.
Oh man. Uh-oh. Damn. I know this ain't who I think it is.
Peace, y'all.
Uh-oh. Yeah, dude. Yo, I think you're gonna have to take him on. You're gonna have to take him on, man. This dude right here, man.
Chief X. What's good, Chief X? What's good? Good to see you, brother. Good to see you.
Chief in the house.
And here's an like, Brother Gideon. How much did you hit, brother?
Off and on, I heard about 25, 35 minutes of it.
Well, part two is really going to be dedicated to you and the rest of the Israelites. So I want to give you the first opportunity to add on to what the brother's saying, or do you have any pushback?
All right, yeah, appreciate it, sir. First of all, I want to give all praises to the Most High in the name of Yahshua HaMashiach. Shalom to everybody on the panel. The brother did a good job, man. I mean, when speaking of things like, the early inhabitants of Europe, I definitely agree with that. That a lot of the civilizing factors that came into Europe came from the so-called black man. And one of the most poignant examples that I go into is when we look at the Israelite in the Iberian Peninsula. Because when we look at them in the centuries, like say, for instance, the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, we see a European Jew, whereas the original Jew or the original Iberian Jew was what we would call black. It's something not called phenotypical absorption. So the brother did a good job, from what I seen. He always be coming with the information, like you said, so he presented very scholarly. The only pushback I would give him is that a lot of his sources were old, but you do need old sources to be contemporary with the times. So you just kind of got to be good in scrutinizing the old sources that you use. But that was a good presentation.
I appreciate that, brother. And actually, this part one is derivative, meaning largely it's derived from that old source that you're talking about. Ancient and Modern Britons is the only old source that I used. And I used it because it's completely validated with the modern science, the modern genetics, the modern archaeology. And that's why I pointed out the aspects in the book that have been completely validated by the modern genetic science, like the fact of when the source, Ancient and Modern Britons, talks about the Phoenicians being in Britain and how the Phoenicians traded with the people of Cornwall dealing with metal. Well, that's representing the tin trade. That exactly correlates to the tin trade and the connection between the Levant and Britain, and the acquiring of tin ingots to make the bronze. So that's why I pointed that out, as well as when the source talks about the people from the Iberian Peninsula being in Britain. That's why I pointed out the genetic evidence from that about people from Iberia moving up into Britain. So the source was completely validated on that. And when the source talks about the early inhabitants of Britain bearing resemblance to the people of Australia, that's why I brought in the C haplogroup and the Aegnasian people, because the modern genetic evidence shows that the source was completely accurate on that as well, right? So this presentation was derivative, meaning I derived it from what was stated in ancient and modern Britain specifically. So ancient and modern Britons was the only old source or Victorian era source that I used, and it's at the center of this presentation, and I supplemented modern data, modern research, and modern science to show where that Victoria era source was completely spot on, accurate, and correct.
Hence the rigorous scrutiny.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, let me move on. Suntan, what up, brother? Unmute yourself.
Peace, guys. Power. Listen, I love the way you put us into your presentation. So that's all I got to say. We got people on the panel. I ain't got to look at them until they don't want us in there. So peace to you, man. Keep up the good work. You're leading me to study more.
Right, what up, man? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm unmute myself. I got a little pushback only because I used to feel the same way about Mac Ritchie. Here's volume 1, but he also wrote volume 2. You didn't show that, I didn't think. But I don't have it. Yeah, I got both volumes here, volume 1 and 2. And that's what they called him a fairy and a pseudo teacher, and the scholars are not in agreement with him. So my thing is this, though. They are agreeing, and I agree, and we know blacks was in ancient Europe in the Moorish days in the castles on the rugs of certain German blankets that was made and showing kings and black castles and all. We know he was there, but a lot of the stuff he said that was fairy tales and folklore was dealing with different aspects of the color black in a situation as opposed to a human people. But I want to deal with this. Look at actual ancient DNA findings from Britain. So I came Ancient and Modern Britain by David McRitchie. It says, here's a credible source, including a primary source, scholarly critic from 1907, that explicitly say McRitchie's Ancient and Modern Britons and the broader pygmy little dark people thesis he built around it does not rest on archaeological scientific proof, but on folklore, tradition, speculation, or that no archaeological evidence supports the key diminutive pygmy population claim at the heart of his argument. You remember when you talked about what's the guy's name? The Warrior. Remember that movie? We all watched that movie. Mel Gibson. Yeah. So Braveheart. He was supposedly a pig.
Yeah, Braveheart.
They had said a long time ago that the word picking in, he owned the little slave black people on the slave farms was from that word pick. But then they found out that was pseudo. So I just want to kind of look into stuff a little bit more when we're dealing with McRitchie, because a lot of his stuff it's not based. For instance, no evidence has been produced that a race of pre-Neolithic or even prehistoric pygmies existed in this country. Gutenberg. It's a lot of scholars that came out against him, and he's he's passed away and all, but his stuff was based on stories that was told.
No, he was talking about like the Arthurian legend and the thing from Parador. Those are from the legend, and I clearly pointed that aspect out. But the Tasmanian and the Australian, those aren't pygmy peoples, and that's the group that is at the center of what's going on here. Those are not pygmies, and those peoples have been documented. The Negrito is mentioned. They are associated with Eastern pygmies, but the Negrito is mentioned added on with the Tasmanian and Australian, largely him representing southern Asians, which we know is the black population of Asia. Also, the source that you pointed out that refuted him is from the early 1900s, right? So even your source is still outdated. That's why I'm going with modern genetics that does confirm what David McRitchie put out, right? Which overturns the speculative objection of your source that is still from the early 1900s, which is outdated, severely outdated compared to the genetic information that I brought out that completely validates McRitchie. So that's my only.
Let me say that. Just because you said my source is outdated, I had other sources, newer sources, peer-reviewed sources by, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's something like a Norwegian name, Grydeh with an O with a slash in it and a J. Something like Hercules, 2013 peer-reviewed frame. McRitchie as explaining fairy tale, not archaeology. It's a lot more in here I didn't go through that brings us up to 2026 and all that. That's saying he has no archaeology. So I'm just saying I didn't go through it, but I was bringing up the first one just to start with. But go ahead.
No, I agree with you. Hold on. I just wanted to acknowledge the brother real quick. I agree with you, the lack of archaeological evidence that McRitchie presents, but also I supplement more information on this Black Douglas conversation in part 2. But I acknowledge your point of the lack of archaeological evidence. This point is not based off of archaeological evidence. It does rely heavily on linguistic and textual analysis and also cultural things as well, right? Anthropology involved. So you know what I mean? So I acknowledge that as far as the data points.
All right, let me move on. Let me get hey, Chief X, I see you. I'm gonna get you in a minute because I'm gonna allow you to go back and forth with the brother. So I just want to get the people in right quick. Let me go to let's go to Armin Rob McCarthy. What's up, brother?
What's going on, fam? I'm driving, so it might be a little choppy. I just want to ask the young brother. It was a great presentation. What is your stance on the Black Madonna and Child that's found in Europe? Do you think it was a depiction of actual color, or was it a symbolism to the Russians?
It was clearly a depiction of the color. And a lot of the Russian icons and paintings have darker skinned individuals in general. So when you look at Russian art, the Russians were depicting people darker in general, regardless of who they were. So they were more honest about that. When you find the Black Madonna in more Western areas, like say Italy, I do think that is a remnant of something iconic that is being preserved, possibly from the cult of Isis that I had mentioned earlier in the presentation. And you do see a clear transfer or a syncretism from the cult of Isis, specifically with the Isis and Horus Child motif. So I think the blackness of the origins of that motif being Isis and Horus, I think that is still being preserved in those Black Madonna icons, specifically in the West. I know in the East, they generally depicted those religious icons darker colored, which speaks to the darker coloring of Europe in general at that time. To link it to my presentation, the reasons why the Russians even depicted people darker in general is because the view of Europeans included darkness. So this archetype of light is very new, and that's what my presentation points out, and that's is exemplified in that Russian art. The reason why they're so dark in that Russian art is because people were darker back then in Europe on average in general.
All right, let me move on. Let me get to, Devil Dog. What up, brother? Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hey, peace to everybody, boss. This was a great presentation. I was really kind of, I got a question for you, and I got a little something. I'm gonna talk to the older guys like Sa and Suntan and my brother. Shit, I'm sorry. Anyway, this is what I'm gonna say. When we was growing up back in the 60s, you remember all the movies that we watched, right? And the white folks would be on their boats and they would go to these uncharted islands that nobody never been to in their life, right? And as soon as they pull up on the island, who was on the beach?
Black folks.
It was us. It was us every time. You know what I'm saying? But nobody never been there, but we was already there, you know. So, you know, I had to put that out there. And then I got a question for you, boss, young man. And you did pretty good there with that presentation. I just got a question. 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens sapien, where did we come from? The North, Central, or West Africa?
I'm so glad you asked that question. And I also talk about it in part 1 of my Out of Africa presentation, Out of Africa Genetic Reality. And the 300,000 years ago, the Jebel Erud findings in North Africa, in Morocco, right? Northwest Africa, Morocco, the Jebel Erud findings. And those are the oldest example of Homo sapiens sapien morphology. It either represents the intermediate between Heidelbergensis and Homo sapien, and it would literally be quote unquote the missing link, or it represents the oldest morphological demographic of Homo sapiens sapiens that still retained some archaic features. Because the Jebel Erud findings have Homo sapien morphology in the face, but they also maintain archaic hominid morphology. So that's why the scholars are like, it could represent either the missing link, literally the missing link, or it represents the oldest Homo sapien demographic that still maintained archaic features. So Morocco,
All right, man.
Northwest Africa.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Keep it moving, baby. Keep your head up.
Yes, sir.
Let's go on over to Apostle. Unmute yourself, Apostle.
Yeah, Young God Energy. Good presentation, man. Your presentations are getting clear for me, man.
Hey, you know part 2 is going to be more about the Israelites, so.
Yeah, that's good, because I'm about to put one on him just to congratulate him and let him know, although he's going to catch feedback from other people. I got something in the cylinder side. God Energy, can I share it?
Unmute yourself, God Energy.
You trying to share your presentation? You can't summarize
I don't want to share no I don't want to share something to go along with your presentation. No, I don't want to share a presentation. No, sir.
Just give him a question. Just talk to him.
What you got, brother? You can add on.
Yeah, I'm adding on. I just want to show a picture of King James, just to agree with you. Just to agree with you.
All right, there go James, man.
This is a picture of King James from one of the universities in UK. You see it?
Yeah.
Hold up.
I can't hear you.
Can you blow it up? Can you blow it up?
I think I can make it bigger.
So look, I'm familiar with the picture, right?
Right.
If I can get a credible source on that picture, then I feel like that picture accurately represents what my information is gonna say in part 2. I feel like it coincides with the structure that's being built here and what's going to be documented in part 2. If there is a credible source for that depiction right there, then I think there's a conversation to be had. And I think part 2 of my presentation is going to flesh out some of the details of that conversation.
Right. This is in the library. It's in the library, what they call the New College Library.
You can't blow it up?
I just blew it up.
No, you didn't.
You didn't blow up at all?
No.
Okay, you know how you hit those 3 dots? I did that. I thought it would have got bigger. Hold on.
No, you got to blow up the spot on there. Apostle says 150.
Okay, wait a minute. Hold on, man. Let me pull it back down because I got this thing at 360.
But it's the picture of King James that I'm sure most of us are familiar with. If you look up Black King James, it's the drawing that you're gonna see. If you look up King James, it's what you're gonna see when.
Let me see. I hit the dots over here. No, that's not how you do it.
We ain't got time to teach right now. Let me move on to the next brother.
So just hold on for a minute, sir. If I can.
Don't worry about it. We understand that fake
picture.
That's
all. We've been pushing this picture for over 10 years now. So I'm glad that you're now speaking to it. Continue to speak to it. My genealogy, if we can be trusted, it goes right back to the Iberian coast, to Portugal, I am what they would consider swarthy color, curly hair, maybe a tinge darker, could be, but when you see me, that's who you see.
All right, thank you. Last but not least,
Israelites all the time, and I'm gonna keep saying it. All right. Appreciate your presentation. Good one.
All right, last but not least, DJ, what up, man?
Man, you always gotta save the best for last. You gotta do that now. But I want to say one thing though, y'all boy. God damn, I came up through the era. No profanity. I came up through the era of sa.neter. He was here promoting Seti and Pharaoh and Polite and all the little crazy. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I Seti my guy. Seti my guy. That's my go-to. Pharaoh, he fell off the map, you know, heavily, and you know, we can't do nothing about that. It's cool. But when I hear y'all speaking on the thing y'all speak on, right, it just bugs me, dog. It bugs because y'all talking about things that happened in the BC era, in the C whatever era. What I want to speak on is what happened when after the Bible thing, right? After the Bible said we're gonna go on slavery and chains. Okay, the Bible said we're gonna be in slavery and chains. Okay, let's start there. So we was enslaved for 100 years in America. So what is the solution next? I don't want to hear about 1836. I don't want to hear that. What is the solution next? That's it. What is the? Oh my God. The solution there. I'm sorry. I had a call, y'all. I had my girl go snap. She go kick my boongie after this though, but I want to get this point across though. What are we doing? If y'all could just put y'all money together, Apostle, sa.neter, put y'all money together, send me on an expedition to Africa. Let me go talk to different tribes. Let me talk to different people. Let me talk to them. Let me talk to them. Let me. So we don't have to do the sources of this source, that source. Y'all got prime sources. You want a prime source? You know, I don't want to hear sources about no cracker from goddamn 18 this and that.
You don't know what you're talking about,
Give it to me.
sir. You don't know what you're talking about. Send this nigga to Africa.
Y'all can have this. If y'all want to just, if sa.neter could do it, I know he could do it. Send me and God Energy to Africa in a couple of months. And guess what? Me and God Energy will come back over here with so much information, y'all mind will blow. Y'all won't even be able to take it.
That's
God Energy, listen to what I'm saying. Right.
Hold on. Let me move on over to King to Chief X. You want to say something, God Energy, before that?
No. I was gonna get us back on track, but if you're gonna do it, go ahead.
All right, here we go. We got Chief X in the building, so I know y'all two gonna do a little battle right quick, go back and forth. And okay. Profanity, brother. No profanity.
All right. Can you hear me?
All right, let's get it. What you got?
Can you hear me well?
Yep.
Okay. Before I start, I just want to say mental health issues is rampant around here. Wow. Everybody's solution is different than other. My solution is different than God Energy solution. My solution is different than sa.neter solution. My son don't know none of y'all. His solution is different than mine and different than y'all's. We all Americans and everybody's on their own. Understand that. You're all on your own. Your life is what you make it. Get out this, we going this unity and cut the bull crap. Now, to God Energy's presentation, it was horrible. It was egregious. And he should be jailed for intellectual treason amongst our people, for intentionally and purposely miseducating our people. I'm looking in the chat and I see little ladies. Oh, go ahead, God Energy. I'm saying, God Energy, this Chief X you talking. See, me and you know that you intentionally lying. Me and you know that you purposely lying, and you're purposely miseducating these sisters in the chat who are confused and gullible. Real quick.
I can't even see the chat. I can't even see the chat.
That's okay. I'm letting you know that you're miseducating them. Check this out. It's very foul and disrespectful for you to go into this lecture and not tell us about the author of the book who you were basing your presentation off of. Okay? This guy, David McRitchie, was born in 1851. He died in 19.
Your mic is breaking up. Static on your mic.
Okay, is it static? Let me put my.
No, it's good now.
It's good now?
Yep.
You sure?
I said yes, brother.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure why you didn't let the people know about David McRitchie, born in 1851, passed in 1925, which was 5 years before my grandmother was born, and I'm 56 years old. To be playing us and taking him as a source in 2026 is egregious and foul. The genome wasn't even mapped back then. Are you kidding me, bro? Listen here, real quick, just a brief synopsis, right? The book you read, that you were basing your presentation off of, Ancient and Modern Britons, by David McRitchie, is a historical, not scientific work proposing, it says, that indigenous British populations had dark-skinned and African-like features, often linking them to gypsies. While popular with some revisionist historians, check my words, that's popular with who? Revisionist historians.
All right, but Chief X, do you have a question though? You got to come with a question.
Okay.
Allow him to respond.
So David McRitchie is not largely considered fringe, or he pushes pseudo history, and is not evidence-based in anthropology or genetics. Okay, let's just be clear about that. I'm not sure why you didn't let the audience know that. Not one historian in 2026, not one geneticist in 2026, not one archaeologist in 2026 agrees with him at all. He was born in 1851. It's shameful that you gave us that misinformation and didn't inform us about this guy who passed away in 1925, way decades before the genome was mapped. So I just wanted to say that.
Hey, let me ask you before you respond, brother. Hey, Chief X, will you have a discussion with the brother or a debate with God Energy on this subject?
We can debate on this subject, any other subject that we can come to a topic agreement about.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, God Energy.
Yeah, I'm glad you provided me the opportunity to reiterate this, because all throughout my presentation, I called McRitchie a Victorian era anthropologist, telling the audience about him, as you say, because when you say tell the audience about him, you bring up his time frame. And all throughout the presentation, I referenced him as a Victorian era anthropologist addressing his time frame. But also, it's not just David McRitchie, because David McRitchie himself isn't making all of these claims, right? So there are other anthropologists that were referenced by David McRitchie as well that bring their authoritative merit, right? The requisite accredited citation was provided on this topic. And it's significant that these Victorian era anthropologists said this because the modern science that did not exist during their time, when that modern science emerged, it completely validated what these people said with their observation of metrics. That's why I made the presentation, to show that modern science, once applied to what these specific individuals said in this specific instance, they were correct. I even said, when I said that these Victorian era anthropologists are correct, I even made sure I said, in this regard, being very specific to what they did get right that has been confirmed by the modern genetics once the genome was sequenced, right? So I did completely address that, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity to reiterate that, but the audience can hear it for themselves if they simply rewatch my presentation. So I did bring that up, and it's not just David McRitchie that you have to contend with on this completely accurate observation. On a side note, I didn't even mention the Gypsies, but it just so happens that the C haplogroup is associated with the ancestral South Indians. So even if you do add the Gypsies in there, the basal C clade does link India to this same British, Australian, and Indian family. But I left the Gypsy part out.
So you state that the people in his Victorian era backed him and agreed with him. They were also dead wrong. In the late 1800s, I don't care what you say, who backed him. They were all wrong. Okay? Just real quick though. David McRitchie was a Scottish folklorist. He was into folklore. Any sane person who can hear my voice and understand can Google David McRitchie. He's a folklorist, meaning he's into folklore and stories about fairies. A fairy is a type of mythological being. No wonder you keep talking about Hercules, okay? A fairy is a type of mythological being or legendary creature. I'm a Homo sapien family. Generally described as anthropomorphic, found in folklore of multiple European cultures, right? You misled the people, fam. Okay. Now, he doesn't have any support in today's time. So your claim of modern scholars backing what he said then is a lie. You can't find not one. I didn't say 2, 3, 4, 5. I said not one scholar in 2026 agrees with anything that McRitchie said. And you can't put a source up of anyone in today's time agreeing with him. You just lied. McRitchie's theories of fairies sparked criticism from proponents of the religious and psychological origin of fairies, right? He to use him in 2026 talking to us Black Americans is egregious, bro. And I just can't understand how you guys just get off and feel good about lying to people. You guys want that much attention. You say, let me just create some fringe crap and put it across to the audience and see what I throw against the wall and see what sticks. This is what you did. Anybody can Google what I said. He's into fairies, fairy tales, aka.
Can I respond? Because you're repeating the same thing about the fairies. I get it, and I want to actually respond to that because I'm glad you brought that up. because I'm disappointed in myself that I left out a point that I could have added from the folklore that he brings up to the point of the black presence in Britain, the Svart Alfar, meaning the black elf. So not only was Olaf Svarti or Olaf the Swarthy, the king of man, whom black Danes and black oppressors were associated with, the Lloyd and MacLeod family that Kenneth Dub the Niger is associated with. You have legends of the Svart Alfar. So people like the Dub Lachlaners or the black Scandinavians, as opposed to the Fionn Lachlaners, the white Scandinavians, they all would have been hearing tales of the Svart Alfar or the swarthy elf, right? Part of that folklore that you're talking about. And David McRitchie uses the Svart Alfar or the swarthy elf, as well as the Welsh legends of the Arthurian lore that mentions black knights, black oppressors being held up in black forts. He uses the folklore, right, of that time to illustrate the ethnological and morphological gradient that existed at that time. That not only would you find the presence of black Europeans in surnames like Macduff, Dunn, Don, you also would find the presence of black Europeans in the folklore represented by the black knights and black oppressors that the hero Peredur or Arthur would fight against, or the Svart Alfar, the swarthy elf.
God Energy, can I ask a question?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Not yet. Not yet. We're going to finish with Chief X.
So the fact
trying to get a debate here, Rakufu.
The fact that we got to sit here and say folklore and fairy tales and fairies and what this guy was into, and he's not an anthropologist. He's none of this. He's not a scientist. He's none of this. The fact that you would sit here in 2026 and present some guy in the 1800s to us as some real history or some real, genetic information is crazy to me. But I'm not going to keep going back and forth with you. I just wanted to say these few things and let you know that this presentation was egregious and it was foul, and you really need to stop this God energy. You got to stop miseducating people on purpose.
I'll never stop.
Because I know. And let me just say this one other thing.
He said on purpose is hilarious.
Let me just say this one other thing. Moors, which you mentioned a bunch of times, were not black folk. You guys can play this dark light game and skin color game. That means absolutely zero.
What?
Because
the Moors was not black?
sa.neter, I did this.
No, I'm asking you.
No, I did this. I did this presentation on your show twice.
Oh man, and you didn't prove that. You can't prove that.
Hold on. You said Egyptians was not black, and now you saying the Moors was not black? Hey, yo, Chief, man.
sa.neter, listen. Go ahead. I did the presentation about the Moors not being black on your channel. Not one person in this community has refuted it yet. Not one person has touched it or even thought about touching it because they're scared to.
I'm gonna replay it then. I'm gonna replay it so the people can
I'll send it to you. Now, the thing is, when we talk about Moors in this so-called conscious community, people get their dates and chronology screwed up. When we talked about Moors and how we teach it old school, we helped the Europeans and taught the Europeans how to bathe and all that old fake history crap. Okay? Moors who conquered Spain or Iberian Peninsula were Arab dynasties, not sub-Saharan Africans. Arab dynasties. Moors or Berbers and Arabs. Now, when you talk about the Victorian era, you're talking about people who use the word Moor in a different sense, not in the same context. But the Moors that we mainly talking about are the people who conquered Spain, and those were Arabs and Berbers. Black folk, sub-Saharan Africans didn't conquer Spain. Matter of fact, they didn't even know a Spain existed. Okay?
They had been moving back and forth from Spain for thousands of years. My presentation documented it. My presentation documented the movement of North Africans into Spain, then into Britain. What are you talking about?
Unbelievable.
He's wilding.
Black folk have nothing to do with Spain or Iberian Peninsula at all. except being in the army and put on the front line to die.
But Chief, see how he's standing up here?
Hold on,
you ran.
Hold on, Apostle. God energy. You want that? You want that debate? That topic?
Which topic?
The Moorish topic would be great. I'll go.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. Chief X saying that. You want that topic?
Whether the Moors Negroid or not.
I might consider that one.
Yeah.
I might consider that one.
Scared.
I might consider that one. Well, I mean, you ran from the debate I wanted to have about North Africa. Like,
what was the topic that I ran from?
It was about North Africa, the blackness in North Africa, all of that.
Topic, fam.
I forgot.
Okay,
we were having the best one.
You're lying again. We never had a debate. No, stop. Listen here, bro. I would not lie. Trust me, God energy. We never had a debate set up.
But you were put on the show. Nah, we never had a debate set up. You was avoiding it.
Listen.
We never had a debate set up.
God energy. We never even had a topic to discuss. Stop playing with the people, bro.
No, you avoided it. That was my point.
Nobody.
All right. Chief, we talking about now. So he's going to look into that, dealing with the Moors topic. I like that topic. That sounds good. Something different from the Bible. That's good. All right. Hey, Chief, text me the title, and then I'll run it by him. Text me the title.
And I'm out of here, so I ain't
gonna. All right, peace, Chief. All right, Apostle. Unmute yourself, Apostle.
Yeah. Now I was just taking note how when Chief X came in here and did his presentation, like a bat out of hell, he got the hell up out of here. He wouldn't stand for one question. He wouldn't let them young guys question him at all. He ran out of here like a bat out of hell. And what did he do? Turn around, as soon as the dude do a presentation, he jump up on here and interject some utterly nonsense.
I remember that.
And just today, utterly nonsense. When he said the Moors were not black.
Oh, man.
Now, I don't say the Moors were Moabites. That's another black guy's problem. Everything that sounds like more, they want to say more. No, the Moabites had nothing to do with the Moors.
The Blackamoors. They even use the word, the term Blackamoors.
And Spain. That's right. The Moabites is on the other side of Jordan. That's where they from. They're from the other side of Jordan.
Yeah, that'd be an easy win for you right there.
But I mean, I'm about to do part 2, so the debate might be irrelevant after part 2. That's why it's like just because I'll be putting together these presentations and they be 100 and something slides, so I gotta break them in half. But part 2 of my presentation might handle that already. That's why I'm saying like, let's just see real quick.
Before you do part 2, let's do the debate first. Let's get that done.
I put together a whole presentation. Like I'm trying to schedule part 2 and get that done. If he still want to debate after that, we can debate. We could debate after that.
All right.
Yeah, we can debate after that.
The cat's out the bag, man. It's going to be kind of hard, you know.
Yeah,
well, we'll see.
Apostle, I hope, brother, that you are in the laboratory and you're getting your stuff together. Don't wait.
You ain't got to worry. Look.
Don't wait.
Hands, man. I'm not worried about. I'm not. More, please. After yesterday, please. And I'm not taking it lightly, because I know I have the hardest times on these channels of winning the debate that I clearly win. Black Jesus, I clearly won that debate.
Yeah, you won that.
The white boy, I clearly won that debate.
Which white boy?
That airplane guy. You know, the same one. You know the boy that used to come over here, laid back on the sofa.
Oh, okay.
Whatever his name is. I clearly beat that boy, man.
Ryan, you talking about Ryan?
He might have a PowerPoint. He might have a PowerPoint. He showed no sources. All I did was show sources about the king of Israel, Herod the Great, the Hasmoneans, Edomites, the Romans, Edomites. I showed it all. Went back to Philip, the Macedonian. Showed that. Come on, man. Come on. He said Esau had 6 sons. Esau had 12 sons. It's pathetic. Know how bad I be.
All right. Now, with this information that's going to come out, I'm not confirming a 12 tribes or a lost tribes thing, and I'm also not confirming that the black people in America are the ancient Hebrew Israelites, right? So whatever overlap there may be or room that opens the door for a conversation for that population, that's different from the connection that gets made between the modern population of us here in America being related to certain people and 12 tribes and things like that as well. So I also want to make that distinction.
Yeah, I can't comment on it until I see it. So,
all right, we got the one-eyed bandit up in the building.
What up?
We got the spoiler here.
Yeah. Unc, what's happening? What's going on, Unc?
Yeah, I was trying to catch that nigga Chief X. He left. You got him off though.
No, I'm glad you didn't.
I ain't want to mess up your show. I was gonna ask that little sucker. Okay. I was gonna ask him why he said what he said about me.
Yeah, you ain't got to bring that up.
I'm not. Hold on.
Hey, you know, he said that the Moors was not black too.
No, don't cut me off. So out of respect for the energy God of God energy, even way it works, see the energy God energy. You know, I didn't want to come on because I'm definitely never sitting amongst a group of individuals and one had said something out of kilter. I would have to talk to him. So that's why I didn't do it.
He said when he catch you, he gonna put you in a hole where you can't get out of. He said he used to be a wrestler.
Yeah,
that nigga couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
He's gonna put you in the chokehold and everying.
I'm at the age now where, matter of fact, I stopped fighting at 15. The fights was over with, so I'm never fighting. Like I'm in Georgia, and the fighting thing has been off the table. Nobody do that. That's crazy.
Hey, how long you gonna be here?
When I'm gonna be here enough to make a statement on the presentation. When here?
I needed you to hold it down for a minute. If you ain't gonna be here long, I'll let Apostle do it.
Yeah, I'm right here. Let Apostle do it. I'm right here. Hey,
all right, Apostle. Listen, Apostle. Hold on, man. Hold on. Apostle, let the people talk. Don't put nobody in the back. Make sure everybody respect the host, and that's Apostle. So just respect him, and everybody will be all right. But Apostle, remember, Apostle, this is God Energy show. So whenever God Energy want to speak, he gets the mic automatically.
Hold up, I need to ask you one quick question. I don't have this thing right here. I shot something to you in Zillow. You said don't speak on it, but did you get it at least?
Who, me?
Yeah, I just shot it just about an hour ago. I shot you something.
What you said? What you shot me? Two bills?
30.
Okay, that's good. I got it. If you sent it, I got it. Thank you, brother. Right. Appreciate it. I always get it.
I love that hat, Saw. I love that hat.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. A sister picked this hat out for me. I was walking down the street
tight,
and I stopped at a table, and she was like, "Yo,
that's
fine. Get that hat right there." That sister is Nepal. Nepal told me to get this hat. Nepal was the one that told me to get that hat. She said, "Yo, get that hat."
Yeah.
And I was live on the joint.
Yeah.
And I think that was like 4 years ago. 4 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, that's official tissue right there, B.
Yeah, it is nice. It's wool. So it's warm. It's nice and warm.
Right.
Yeah. But thank you, brother. Apostle, you got the floor, man. You heard me, Apostle?
And I wanted to thank
you. Yeah. Hold on. Let me get my point in. I get my point?
Yeah, Ankh was trying to.
I think it's an incorrect statement. I don't use the terminology black when talking about ancient populations because it's ridiculous and it's actually promote racism. But I think it's ridiculous to think. I think some West Africans definitely went to Spain. I think there were North Africans who went to Spain. There were Arabs from Arabia that went to Spain, and I think it was some West Africans who went to Spain too. And so you got two indigenous African populations because the Berbers are indigenous to Africa, and you got West Africa. They went, you know what I'm saying, and the Arabs went. So I don't see. That's crazy to say that didn't happen.
Yeah, and I think the nuances of that, I don't think people are understanding that. More Chief X needs to understand those nuances, and I completely agree. I'm gonna get into that more in part 2 of my presentation because this first part of the presentation was the pre-Islamic era. I really wanted to make the distinction in the 2 different presentations. That part 1, we're gonna deal with the topic excluding the Islamic Moors. So if you notice part 1 that I just did, I didn't really go in on Islam and the Islamic Moorish period or anything like that. We kind of skipped right past it or talked around that. They were only used as a metaphor for a certain type of morphology. But in part 2, it's going to be about the Moors, about the Islamic era, about the Islamic Moors. So, and yeah, you're absolutely right. The West African component, we're going to talk about the North African component, the Arab component, the Islamic component is going to come into play. And I think to deny certain factors about it it's more of an agenda and a rhetoric that's trying to be pushed.
I see you.
I thought they went there under the category of the Moors. I kind of, I mean, like, I think the way we first of all, let me say this to help you out, bro. Most of the books that we came into, what we call consciousness, were already outdated when we got them. And I think we should always start off with that. These works are outdated. They're not where the standard is today. And that's okay. But when we got these books that was from the 50s and the 1800s and the 1900s and the Dr. Ben's works and all that, in the 70s, they was already out of date. And so we should start with that, right? So we can help each other in our journey for education, right? And you deal with today's anthropology, which is important. But I would like to make this last statement for you. Remember, when you look at those haplogroups you're talking about, you're actually talking about non-African populations. And at that point, it doesn't matter what their skin color is, what the phenotype is, because actually we never connect phenotypes to haplogroups. That would be a mistake to do, because you could have a quote unquote non-African haplogroup and have dark brown skin at times, right? Or have what you perceive to be big noses, or whatever. That's my point. Like in the Adamese Island, they come from a Eastern Asian population. And
the D haplogroup.
Yeah, but your eyes is lying to you. That's why we use tools in science. Because just looking at them, you say, man, they come straight from Africa. Looking at them, your eyes, but your eyes are lying to you. I just want to, make it short and sweet. That's all.
I definitely get that. And in my presentation, I pointed to a picture of Hercules. It's a picture of Hercules, a painting of Hercules, and I said all of these people could be the same haplogroup, but they all had different skin tones, right? So I was illustrating that point that a haplogroup doesn't automatically equal a specific morphology, which I think is what exactly you were trying to speak to. And I accounted for that with the painting right there.
African and non-African.
Yeah, I get that.
When they leave Africa, the mutation occur. You was at the C haplogroup, all of those are non-African populations.
I don't use the term African to speak about a melanated content or a certain morphology of the face and the cranium. That does not equal African, even though some people might assume that, like you're pointing out. But that is a concept I have long since integrated and known about, so I don't have to be reminded of that.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, I got you, Zion. As soon as they get done, I'm coming right to you.
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead. Let the brother die.
I wanted to ask a question to both Ankh West and God Energy on this topic, because
Well,
I wanted to say
ask your question to God Energy.
Okay, so God energy.
Yes.
We discussed prior to we discussed about that what is it SLC trait.
Yeah.
And Ankh makes, and I agree with Ankh when we make a specification, when we separate just dark skinned people from African skinned people. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is genetically because they have dark skin that we're all connected, because the SLC trait, right? That mutated
No,
in
light the SLC trait is what makes the skin lighter. So once you get the SLC mutation, you're dealing with depigmenting of the skin, the hair, and the eyes when you get to the OCA genes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when people object, like what's his name? Not Anquest, but what's his name that you were arguing with and he ran?
Chief X.
Chief X?
Yeah, Chief X. When he argues, oh, these people were not black. And we go back past 8,000, 15,000 years. There's no SLC mutation.
So he wasn't speaking, but he wasn't speaking to that time period though. To his point, he was specifically speaking about the Moors, the Islamic Moors, the time of Spain, Al-Andalusia, 700 AD. That's what Chief X was more talking about.
Okay.
But you also have to get into the etymology of that word and when that word would have been used first, and then when you start associating things with it as well in that context, right? So there's a long history and story with that word, and then when you get to specifically to the individuals in question, though, the Islamic era Moors, the 700 AD Moors, there's a lot of contemporary documentation that documents the morphology of these peoples and the variety and the gradient in the morphology of these peoples. So there's a lot that you have to deal with there. And then to say they were or were not something, you have to impose a little bit of a generalization. Right. But without splitting hairs, quote unquote, splitting hairs on those details, I think for argument's sake, there is a yay or nay to be made in that argument to say the Moors were black versus the Moors weren't black. One just has to do a lot more heavy lifting than the other.
Why would you say they was black though?
Huh?
SLC trait. That's why I brought it up.
Zion, that SLC conversation applies to the deep time aspect of this. When we're talking about the Moors, so many people have now spread the SLC, and that's become such a normity in Europe that part doesn't apply and doesn't affect the blackness or whiteness at that time, because they're there. The SLC is there. The SLC is ruling. The SLC is about to do the Reconquista. You know what I'm saying? So the SLC is rocking at that time period. But to Ankh and Chief X and to the conversation of the Moors and them being quote unquote black, first of all, you have to already acquiesce to the terminology black to interface with this conversation. So if you're the type of person that doesn't technically use the word black and we can't even get into this conversation yet because we're still stuck at the door about the terminology. So to answer your question, first, one has to already acquiesce to the usage of the word black just for the sake of conversation and argument. Now I can explain why I would say that they represent a specific morphology. Because there is, like I said, the documentary evidence, meaning documentation, literary evidence, and then you can get into the art history as well. There's so much that goes into this anthropologically, then the nuances that Ankh himself brought up about the population demographics of the early people expanding. You can make this statement, and there is a variety of sources one could put together to give you ethnological, morphological picture or view of what these people say. And the Chief X is on the side that has to do a lot of heavy lifting. And I suspect, I don't know what information he's going to bring. I didn't see his presentation, but I feel like whatever sources he's using, there is a lot of overgeneralization that's going to go on, and maybe a lack of nuance to population demographics. I'm assuming just off the rip of what the flaw might be in that argument.
I have one last question for you before I slide out. So
yeah, you slid me slide. You just can we address
I was asking questions and he said I can ask a question. I have one more question. That's what I just said.
This is the last one you said.
You want him to have this one? Can he have this one?
Fall back for a second, Ankh. I know you want to beat it.
I didn't say nothing, man. I was quiet. Come
okay,
on,
yeah, we cool. We cool. Ask your last question.
Be on your grass, Ankh. So anyway, so my question is, when Herodotus made the statement concerning his first-hand depiction of Kemetic Egyptians, would that be within that time period where Chief X is literally ignoring what he stated, how he perceived Egyptians being of the same stock as all other Africans? That's it.
What? No, what?
So
Herodotus.
So it's a different time period. It's a different time period, but when we talk about the etymology of the word more, Greeks come into play. But it's the same lack of acknowledgement there. You know what I mean? So right. It's not the same time period. That data point is not being ignored in the Moorish conversation, but the same fallacy is being applied in both instances.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, son of Newt.
All right, hey, God Energy, this your show, man.
Peace, brother.
Yes. This your show. I told them boys, give us the money. Let me and you run this country.
Okay, bro. That's all you got, man.
Whoa. I'm not. Whoa.
Come on, bro.
I just want to get that man his props, though. I just want to give him his props.
You already said that. We heard you when you said that.
Anyways, like I was saying though, now we talk about the Moors and all this. Y'all want to get knowledge. Everybody want knowledge, right?
No, we don't want it. No, we don't. We don't want knowledge.
Can we keep
pseudo killer? You don't kill my dog Sadie. You don't kill Pharaoh. My dog said you don't kill the boy. You're not gonna kill me now. You're not gonna kill me now. Calm it down.
This is what not to do when you are a teenager.
I'm 35 years old though.
I understand. But you were
so, but brother, aside from feeling like you know what I mean, you need to get the knowledge.
Give y'all boy my little 1-2-1-2.
I wanted to ask you if you had a question about any topic from the presentation, the Moors, the Danes, the Picts. Okay, what was the question?
The question was, I'm not against what you're saying though, man. You know what I'm saying? Because God energy, that's new energy, God energy. But what I'm saying is, if we don't keep some of pygmies and the Twa and bro, what are we talking about? Like if we gonna go back to those times, right? If we want to stay in those times, and that's all I want to talk about, we have to talk about the collection of the continent called quote unquote Akibulan, Africa, whatever they want to call it. North Africans, Southern Africans, Eastern Africans, West, all those people were not worshiping the same deities. Let's start there. Can we at least start there, please?
Why?
We can't say that the Southern Africans were worshiping Ma'at. Mm-hmm. No, we can't. No, that's not. No, they might have some type of similarities within the culture. True enough, because the Nile culture did run through the ran through the Nile and did a little thing. Ethiopian.
So nobody said that the South Africans were worshiping Ma'at or that they had the same gods. I didn't even mention pygmies in my presentation.
What I get from the presentation is, I feel like y'all saying like all cultures were entwined with African spirituality when that was not the case.
No, I never mentioned everything coming from Africa or everything having the African spirituality. Specifically in this presentation.
So go ahead, your skin color and my skin color, where does that come from? Does that come from
SLC genes?
Does that come from does that come from quote unquote climate change? Or does that come from Africans having all of the genetic?
It comes from your mom and daddy, man.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
So brother, I'm gonna answer this question. I'm gonna answer your question because I heard your question. That comes from the mutation of SLC genes linked to changes in diet and climate. The difference between mine and your skin color specifically is a result of that. It's not a result of the fact that Africans contain genes that will cause a variety of certain skin pigmentation range, because even just within those ranges, it wouldn't create a skin pigmentation as light as mine. Mine has crossed the line to where it is definitely influenced by the SLC gene mutation that's associated with agriculture and the changing climate and UV radiation.
Where does this come from? God energy. Where does this come from? With this gene, that gene, this no. We're all African, and African people produce all people. Not the genome, that gnome, this gnome, that gnome. No, African people produce all people. The pygmies.
How? Through the genomes, through the information passed down in the genomes. Your point would still require genomes.
The Egyptians were not preaching this genome does this genome. They were not preaching that. They preached that the sun produces what it produces to produce us, the different genomes or whatever. Egypt was not teaching that. See, you're teaching a new age theosophy. The Egyptians, they were teaching life. The dung beetle is a black ass beetle.
Brother, I didn't speak about spirituality or preachings or teachings in my thing. I didn't mention theosophy or anything spiritual with crystals and minerals. This isn't a conversation about spirituality. And you are also not speaking to my presentation at all. I doubt you saw it. If you did, I don't think you're in a state to be able to remember.
Yeah, he smoked crack.
And look, all due respect, we gotta move on.
Wow.
Go ahead, rock.
Okay.
All right, God energy.
Yeah, you need to sit down, bro. You sound retarded.
God energy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, peace, brother.
Peace, family. I want to say to the presentation that you're going to be bringing up when you go into West Africa, you know the word revolution, simple and plain form definition, just means change, right? So you change something, you revolutionize. Okay. The West African, like to Ankh's point earlier, to Silverback on his point, because I never say piggyback, we gorillas. I say the Silverback on his point of we need to update our information. For one, Leja in Suka region, Nigeria. Remember that. Make that a part of understanding what that is. That's a revolutionary place where they found iron smelting older than even Anatolia, right? Where iron came from. So when you bring up the Nigerian or your West African historical presentation, please include that, because they're not including it in schools, and it said it won't be included in schools for another 35 years. So that's
It's funny that you mentioned that, because the iron smelting point is in the source that I'm going to use for part 2, because I'm done with ancient and modern Britons, because it talks about this time frame. So the next part 2 of my presentation is going to be partly derivative of a different book, right? It's called Introduction to African Civilizations by John G. Jackson, with a foreword by, yes, you already know. And the iron smelting that you're talking about, they mention in there in that work by John G. Jackson, but it wasn't relevant to this conversation of Black Europeans, so I did not include it in part 2. You know what I mean? But I got you. I know what you're talking about, though.
That's the reason I gave it to you, because I know you're doing a part 2 in specifically West
I
Africa.
get that. I get that.
Awareness. All right, go ahead.
No, but see, I'm not starting ancestrally in West Africa. I went from 47,000 BC all the way up in part 1 today. Yeah. In part 2, I'm strictly starting at 600 AD and going forward.
Okay. All right.
Devil Dog, what's your question?
Okay.
Hey, all right. Thank you, Apostle. I got like 2 quick questions. I wanted. I heard Professor James Small say one time that saying "pygmy" that was like a derogatory name. Their name is the Twa, right? Okay, and then my second part, like the people on this panel, right, and we all different shades, right? Okay, was it any kind of were there tribes, in Africa that was like this? You know what I'm saying? Different shades of color.
Not really, because how genes circulate a population, it largely forms a homogeneity, right? It largely forms a median pigmentation. That's why population groups and demographics share phenotypes, and that's why it's important for people to date outside of those to add diversity to the gene pool, because homogeneity will start to form. You know what I mean? So a lot of times you deal with, and that's why haplogroups, when you go further back in time, they're better at describing population demographics, movements, and can be correlated to specific morphologies the further back in time you go, because there's less diversity from intermixing. So the further back in time you go, you could definitely link those things. But yes, there's definitely, like, you could go to the Dinka Sudanese and they would all have a one skin tone, as opposed to, say, the Yoruba, who have a more median type of skin tone, as opposed to the Khoisan we know, who have, you know what I mean, a more high yellow kind of skin tone. So even though there's variations between groups, there is largely a lot of times a median of homogeneity, but there's always biodiversity. You know what I mean?
Okay. Hey, what's up, Unc? I want to say that right quick. How you doing, boss?
How you doing, man? How you feeling?
All right.
It's on you, Unc. Oh, I'm sorry. You done? Devil Dog? Were you done? We're done? Okay. On you all.
Yeah, I'm picking back up with the skin color thing. Let me show y'all something right here. I'm just trying to figure out what is the affinity with skin color. Are we saying similar skin color represents what?
No, all I did was answer the brother's question. He was probably just curious, and all we did was answer the brother's question.
If y'all don't mind, I'm gonna throw it. I'm sorry, let me say this right quick. This is what I meant. Like say Uncle Apostle.
Where are they playing in Cleveland?
Hello.
So now overtime. Are they starting overtime?
You got mute out.
Okay, in a minute.
You got mute.
What I was trying to say, and I've been listening to you for a minute, boss. I'm trying to understand this. Like, so say it's me. You see my complexion. It's me, you, and we an Apostle. We in the car. The police pull us over. They gonna say it's 3 black men.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We got all different shades of color. So I'm saying, back in them days, are you saying because you were lighter that you weren't black?
No,
we're not having that type of conversation. We're having a conversation about population. Why would you throw in pseudoscientific laws that they had back then? That was pseudoscientific. We're not applying that to biology today.
But to answer the brother's question, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm
and
trying
that
to figure out what you
for you, so say you have a gradient of,
said. Noise.
there's a difference in our skin tones,
Who's
me,
writing this
and
damn
then you.
thing?
What I'm saying is
Oh,
you
yo,
saw that same variation of skin tones in Italy, in early Italy, in the Villanova civilization, in the Etruscan civilization. You saw that same variation in Greece, which is why Hercules was depicted as someone morphologically reflecting of Ankh, more so than morphologically reflective of me or you, brother who asked that question. You also see that gradient in Britain, right? From the movement of peoples from North Africa through Iberian Peninsula into Britain. So actually the whole point of my presentation was to point out that these places in Europe that have been presented to us in a pseudo-scientific way of being all white, right? In reality, the scientific reality is that in all of these places in Europe, there existed a morphological gradient that is represented by me, you, Ankh, and Indo-European peoples, right? And we all created this mixed population that existed all over Europe, all the way up until they started killing off the black population and then creating propaganda that made it seem like Europe never had a black population. So that was the point of the presentation, was to speak to the clinal gradient that existed in Europe even, that persisted even through the agricultural revolution, even through the spread of the SLC genes through the Yamnaya population, that there still existed European black populations. That's how ingrained the melanated population was in Europe. That when the Yamnaya and the SLC genes spread, black people could still be found in Europe, even outside of the Moorish Islamic expansion. And
So-
it's nothing, and it's nothing to be, it's nothing that goes against this radiation chart or anything. I think just because I'm mentioning black, people are getting scared.
Yeah, we're getting scared because it's confusion and it border and it's high dosage of pseudoism. So my question to you right here: are you consider these black people?
It depends on what you mean by black. Some
Yeah,
people only.
I'm asking you. You the one with
Some
the.
people only. Yeah, that is the Asian black population. That is the South Asian black population.
I mean, that's
So
just.
you consider these people Negroes?
Yeah, that's okay. We'll do it that way because I'm
Yeah,
saying they have no connection. They have no connection to Africa, though. But they had no connection to Africa.
No, being black has nothing to do with being African, and being Negrito has nothing to do with African. That's probably why when I say the word black, you always keep thinking African, and I'm trying to make people African.
No. What you're doing is
that's a good distinction.
Yeah, but when you keep saying black, you're actually like you have a total different meaning than anybody on this panel do. Because the way we got it, which was wild, it was based off of racism, right? When you say black, we thinking kinfolk, bro. We thinking some type
of okay, so can I
hold on, come on, man. Come on.
Okay. No. This is
and then when you say in Britain they was black people, you thinking that they connected to the African population. I'm saying no matter what their color was, they was a non-African population and was more closely related to those people that were lighter. They still was kinfolk. That's what I'm saying. You not saying that? Are you saying that or not? Because that's gonna pin you down to this point. The people that you keep pointing out that was in Britain, they are related to them people in Britain. They're part of the non-African population, and nature knows no color line. Yeah. So they could be like this population right here. They can have browner skin. That's not a big deal. And so you're basically saying
and the facial morphology. No, Ankh, I'm not disagreeing with you. That's why I really feel like you got to pay attention to my presentation instead of looking for something. So let me answer. Let me answer. I put in my presentation that Cheddar Man, they found a modern, and this is my out of Africa presentation that I put this in, that Cheddar Man, they found a modern relative of Cheddar Man living today, and Cheddar Man had dark skin and blue eyes, and his modern relative does not have dark skin. So I pointed that part out, that these people are related to those people. And in this presentation today, I pointed out that Cheddar Man population that added to the black layer of people in Britain. But then I also pointed out specifically African peoples and them moving into Britain and them adding a layer of blackness. So my presentation was about various layers of blackness and peoples that, yes, I consider black, like these individuals right here, because black only meaning African, Negro, slave, N-word, that is very pseudo. But if we're gonna use black, the least pseudo context to use it in would be to apply it to populations like this, like the Tasmanians, like the Dravidians, and like us. So that's why I use the term black in that way. I am not talking about African descended kinfolk. So thank you for, you know what I mean, bringing that up so we could clear that up, because that is not what I mean. But my presentation is about the Cheddar Man type of black peoples that are related to Europeans that have non-African non-African genetic drift. But I am also talking about Africans, Clinal Africans, basal Africans, genetic Africans that also did add to the substratum of Europe and Britain. So it's not an either or.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what you're saying, brother, but I'm not gonna make no argument out of it.
But that's the beauty of rewatching the presentation, so you could hear what I'm saying. Because in order to understand what I'm saying, you have to hear it from me, not through combat, as contrary to popular belief.
Right. Well, let me see when I'm coming back. Go ahead, Francis. What you got, man?
Right. We have to understand black has been used as a physical description for a very long time. And based on history, it would have been used by the people of Kemet first before other people, because those were one of the first two written languages. Later on, people started folding that into race. Black existed long before race. You can see Greeks describing Africans as black. So it belongs to Africans. It came from Africa. And number two, there are, even today in Africa, dark-skinned people with blue eyes. In case people don't know that.
Yeah, and to speak to your point, it wasn't just Greeks calling African peoples black. You have indigenous melanated populations that call themselves black.
I said
right?
that too.
So
I did say Latino energy. I said that first.
Yeah, that called themselves black. Okay. Yeah.
Would have been definitely, they definitely did that long before other people, and it would have initially been dealing with African people calling themselves black. I did say that initially.
Okay, but still to add to that, even outside of Africa, you find people's self-referencing as black in a time period when those morphological types would have been running around. And actually, it was peoples related to these peoples right here that were self-referencing as black. And because, like I stated in my presentation, peoples notice these things. When you have these clinal gradients, one of the first things you use to differentiate is physical determinations of what you see people. And difference in skin color is one of the largest and most obvious things to differentiate a peoples, and that's what the source stated as well. So we don't always have to get triggered about white colonial racism and you know what I mean, how black was used to hurt our feelings and they hung us and they called us monkeys. We gotta let that go. You know what I mean? And be able to talk about this conversation from an educated standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, and not be in such a state of weakness. And why, could we switch to a different image, please? Why are we showing images during my presentation thing? Could we switch this, please?
Yeah, because you like double, triple talking on purpose. So, you do it on purpose, man. Like I'm saying, there's no clarity. I'm saying that word does not bring clarity to the indigenous people at all. There ain't nobody gonna tell you. I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. So I'm gonna rest my case, and I'm gonna let y'all have it. It's fine. I'll get it one day. No, I haven't. No. I'm saying they're not gonna tell you that you confusion. We don't know if they're black, but they're not kinfolk, but they is. They ain't like what? I don't know. There's no clarity here.
No, you are purposely convoluting it by interjecting that. You are purposely convoluting. You are purposely convoluting it when the statements I made and make are clear.
Listen, no, you're convoluting by long discourse with it. Like I'll make one step, you'll go super long, we'll get lost in translation. Like, so I asked you a question about the people that you claim. Are you saying it was an African population that went to Britain? Is that what you're stating? That's all I'm asking right now.
In my presentation, I layered stratas of blackness, one being the Aurignacian, the next being Cheddar Man, the next being the Iberian people, the next being Levantine people. So I'm not saying it's just one thing or one group of peoples that added to the blackness. You know, Cheddar Man, hold on, just wait.
I got it. You don't got to do that.
Okay, boom, you got it. So now you understand. Thank you. I'm not saying one thing.
No, I got that. Don't talk me to death to where I miss your point. Keep it right there, solid. I got it. But you did, and what you just mentioned, you mentioned all non-African populations. So you just teach us about the history of non-African people. That's all. Just say and I shut up and get off here. That's all, baby. It's all good. That's all. Everybody got melanin on planet Earth. There's not a human being walking around that does not have melanin. Just different variant degrees of melanin. So I don't even like that word being.
You don't like anything.
No, man, because the pseudo-rise things, the melanin, this, the melanin.
It doesn't pseudo-rise it. It just reminds you of the passion of the black community movement that you got some agenda against, bro. Like,
you know what the problem is?
I heard you.
Hold, y'all. We got one mic.
Francis.
Talking right now. We got one mic.
You got people in the chat actually thinking.
And God Energy are trying to get clarity. Let them get it.
God, you got people thinking.
Let me give you the clarity.
6,000 BCE. Like the gene for light skin, you find that in Africa, in East Africa, 100,000 years ago. Like it's all there for us to read. That's my point.
Yeah, that's why the morphology comes into play, because you can have two people of the same skin complexion and both of them represent two different types of communities, right? So skin color isn't a proxy. That's why morphology, the prognathism, the brow ridge, the skull shape, the nasal aperture, this is the metrics behind these types of morphologies. And what I was laying down is that you have various groups of people, non-African, like me and you are pointing out, but then I also added the African morphology, the African genetics, the African migrants that also went into Britain and Europe and added to the layer of blackness. So you had a non-African layer of blackness that added to Europe, and you had an African blackness that added and layered to Europe. That's how much blackness was running around Europe. That was the point of my presentation, and that's what I put out there. That it was non-African blackness in Europe and African blackness in Europe. That's how black Europe was. To put it simply.
But God Energy, what Ankh is trying to do is he's trying to be super scientific, and you can't do that.
No,
it doesn't work that way.
It's just contentious.
He's trying to be super scientific.
Super scientific.
Word. Say it again.
I don't believe he's trying to be super scientific.
He is.
It's all right. No, the clarity was needed because the clarity was needed. The clarity was needed.
I'm with you. But initially,
Francis.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, Ankh is speaking for himself, but don't minimize one's ability to try to get clarity by dismissing him or dismissing them. Saying they just being scientific.
We need to understand black was simply a physical description, just as the eye color and other things initially. It wasn't that deep. It wasn't scientific.
So to the brother that's speaking, Apostle, can I just bring? I just want to bring this all back because we're all in agreement here, and yes, the brother is noticing that the clarity was needed. because some people hear the word black and they automatically assume African and they assume certain stereotypes and rhetorics. So the clarity was
I thought
needed.
you was talking about African people, yo. So you talking about, say I'm talking about non-African people. I shut up. Just say it. I shut up. Say, I'm talking about non-African people that got brown skin. I'm like, oh, bet. I like this one. It's a good one. But I think you playing with us right now. You keep playing with us, yo. You keep playing with us.
So this is what I mean about purposely trying to be contentious, because I clearly said I'm talking about non-African black and brown people that also were layered with African black and brown people. It wasn't one or the other. I went through different time periods and pointed out how non-African black people contributed to Europe and how African black people contributed to Europe. It's not a one or the other. Each contributed in different time frames. So that's what I pointed out.
Hey, you know what? That's a little more. Hold on, y'all. I like the way you said that. We starting to come in a little bit better. And I ain't talking. Listen, but what I am trying to tell you is it wasn't that many Africans, and you don't do it. Don't do it, bro. It wasn't that many. Don't do it. You coming from a community think it was full of Africans.
Oh, don't speak to. I never said. I never gave. I never gave that type of metric. So don't put something on me. Don't falsely represent me or try to create a narrative or none of that. So I said what I said, and there it is.
So you saying was it like America? Like America? Hold on, America. You got 200,000 white people, right? Yeah. And you got about 35 to 40 million black people. Are you saying that ratio was like that in Europe? Is that what you're saying? Something like that?
How would I have any census data to make a type of statement like that? That's ridiculous. That premise is ridiculous.
Well, you don't think it's ridiculous to say I'm talking about layers of different white people and layers of different black? I say, well, how many different layers of black people would you say? That's all I'm asking you. I'm just trying to get you ready for Chief X, yo.
You could count the layers, but you can't count. You can't count from the different sources that I used in the time period. You could put together the layers that of course I missed a few layers. I'm not perfect, but I'm just playfully saying that the layers are whatever I put in my presentation, right? So that would just require whatever layers I put. That's how many there are that I'm talking about.
Hey, God energy, man. All right, good show, man. I supposed to come up here and mix it up with you, yo. You good?
I appreciate it. So look, the most interesting takeaway that I got from my presentation, right? The part that I feel like is like, damn, that really gets me as a researcher is the insular Celtic languages and the fact that the oldest versions of the Celtic language still preserve grammatically a genetic relation to Afro-Asiatic languages, meaning that the early Celtic peoples were either partial Afro-Asiatic speakers themselves, or as soon as they came into contact in Britain, they absorbed Afro-Asiatic from the peoples around. So that was, as a researcher, that's the part that I find very interesting because it links North Africa, and then it also is representative of the relationship that Britain had to the Levant through the tin trade, right? So even through Afro-Asiatic migrants going into Britain, there would have been Afro-Asiatic and Semitic contact linguistically through the trade of tin to make bronze. So that's what I thought was dope.
So let me try this one more time. Whoa, I'm coming to you. I just want to say, let me try this one more time with you. Ask a question that pertains to the presentation.
You messed my brain up. God energy. You just said about damn, you fucked my brain up. Talking too much. Damn.
Hey, brother,
you gotta watch your mouth.
You just said something about
you said something a bit longer.
Whoa.
Not with the cursing, man. I'm not going to do it, man.
I'm not cursing.
You did. You cursed. You did. I said I'll F your brain up. Stop it.
Somebody tell that man the congressional hearings ain't debunked no vaccine. Can you
listen? I'm gonna give you one more chance. Calm yourself down. To ask this man a question. Definitely, you must be feeling good, or you feeling bad, one or the other. But I'm gonna give you one more time. Come on, ask your question.
Man, all I was trying to, I forgot.
Question.
I forgot the question.
Okay, so look. All right, so look, let me get it back. Let me get it back on track here, right? Let me get it back on track. Because that Afro-Asiatic linguistic footprint in the Celtic languages.
Yes. That's what I was at. Afro-Asiatic, yeah. When you say,
you feel that you are ready to step in the ring?
There you go.
Not just any ring, I'm talking about the HOK. Toughest environment. sa.neter, talk to it. I teached on 125th Saint for 20 years. It was tough holding back the tears. Fighting police, Uncle Tom and Jigaboos too. The nation of gods and earth was there, the Moors was there too. I built it up.
Yes, sir. You backside? Well, you just shut it down right quick. Okay, God Energy, you got the flow.
God Energy.
Yeah.
I know this your show, but can I just get my little point on?
You can shut it down in about a half hour, Apostle. Let God Energy close out.
All right.
All right, go ahead, DJ.
Yeah,
God Energy. What I was trying to say was, man, before everybody cut me off, God dang.
Hey, come on, man.
God dang. Hey, Apostle, I don't know your red hoodie. Calm down. Let me talk, man. God, leave. Let me talk.
All right.
Let the young
energy. Don't concentrate on me.
Anyways, God Energy.
Yeah.
You said something about I kept hearing you say something about Northern Africa, West Africa, whatever. At any given time, has any Southern African, I'm talking about like the pygmies, at any given time, did they go into England and conquer England? Or that was only the Northern Africans who did that?
So no, the Central African hunter-gatherers and the South African hunter-gatherers, you don't find much evidence for them going into Europe and quote unquote conquering or anything like that. But you do have small statured peoples making their way out of Africa. So they're not conquering, but you do have small statured peoples making their way out of Africa.
So what would make the Northern Africans say that the Southern pygmies are their gods?
They were closer to the coastlines and the bodies of water that connected them to these peoples. So basically Europe and Eurasia is closer to North Africa than it is to Central Africa and South Africa. Africa being huge, Africa being a lot larger than we see depicted on maps. So when you're in Central Africa, it's a long way to go to get anywhere else.
I'm South Africa, not Central Africa. I'm talking about far like Cape Coast, like down at Cape Verde. Down that area. Did they go up to North Africans and conquer them and be warriors?
No. The evidence shows that the people of South Africa actually started in the north and they migrated south. And then during the Bantu expansion, they got pushed further south. So no, though they didn't really go up north and conquer. But hold on real quick. In the pre-Kemetic era, in the pre-dynastic Kemetic era, a few thousand years before dynastic Kemet, you do see a movement of peoples moving up the Nile from the Lake Victoria region up the Nile, bringing certain South African elements there. And you do see certain linguistic correlation with the Hadzabe people who speak click languages like South Africans. But for what you're trying to describe, you largely don't see what you're describing outside of what I just said.
Is there any evidence that any Southern kingdom, I don't know I don't know the biggest southern kingdom besides the Zulus in that area, but Zulus like more Western Africa. But has any southern tribe ever went north and been like, we want to conquer some shit? Or is it just been the North Kingdoms conquer the South Kingdoms?
No profanity,
you have,
man. No
you have
profanity.
kingdoms like Monomotapas and Great Zimbabwe. You have dynastic kingship. You have, you know what I mean? Kingship in South Africa, getting close to South Africa, where you see these things happening, namely Monomotapa and Zimbabwe, the Kingdom of Zanj, which is an East South African maritime trade kingdom. So, but you know, I don't think it meets the criteria of what you're looking for. Like, we're going to go conquer, but no. But you do see imperialism, dynastic kingship, things like that.
Okay, that's enough, brother.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We dialoguing.
That's enough.
Nah, brother, we're going to move on. We're going to move on, brother.
Issa.
Go ahead, man.
My sister Issa is on you. Are you there? Isa or Issa Queen?
Issa, and yes, I'm here. Peace to everyone. I just want to say great presentation again, God Energy. You really out here making presentations look easy, right? I just wanted to say really quickly that I was listening to the conversation about Blackness, right? And I agree with God Energy when he says, like, Blackness does not belong to America, and it doesn't just belong to Africa, because like how we all talk about is that these Black people left Africa and was in other places. And yes, they genetically changed in those places, but that did not change their Blackness. And so you start getting the SLC people, right? And the Asiatic version of the SLC people. I don't have it off the top of my head right now. But I just
MD12.
Yes, thank you. So I just feel like when it comes down to how we talk about Blackness and sharing Blackness with other groups of people, it's just fine. It doesn't take anything away from the American history of Black people here. It doesn't do that. But what it does is show a diaspora, a spectrum of different groups of people that do identify as Black. I don't know if y'all know that, but like African people say they're Black too. Like they're not just calling themselves in tribal. Like I could show you videos of African people calling themselves Black. It's not, we don't own it. And I feel like it has a lot to do with racial insecurities, right? And not really understanding the science behind the evolution that we're studying. Because when you get into the evolution of things, race is not a thing, right? All we're talking about is biodiversity through human beings. That's what we're talking about. And I land there. Again, great presentation.
Much appreciated, much appreciated. And to your point, Dravidians also self-reference as Black. Lord Jehovah, peace, brother.
What's up?
You got the floor.
All right.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just got my new computer. Great presentation, brother. Shout out to you, God Energy.
Much appreciated.
Coming support and chime in on the topic, brother.
No, I appreciate it. And tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but whenever I do part 2, I am interested in what you might have as feedback on part 2. Again, like I said, part 2, I hope the Israelites pay attention to that one, because I'm even kind of surprised in the direction that I went with it, but that's where the information led me. So, yeah, we're going to get into it.
Yes, sir. Great presentation.
I appreciate it.
Anything else?
And I just made a little debate flyer for Chief X and Energy.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. Let me go back and get it.
Okay.
Let me go back and get it.
Okay.
I didn't put no topic up there. I didn't know what, I'll let sa.neter do that, but
I might have a real fight on my hands. All right.
You got it, champ. You got it, champ.
Oh yeah.
I know you did not stroke this man's narcissistic, sociopathic messiah complex by calling him Lord Jehovah. Did you just do that?
Is that my son? Is that my son?
We're not trying to help nobody with their psychosis.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Is that my son?
We're not trying to do that.
He followed me.
Why are we doing that?
Do you want
energy? You know better.
Do you want it again?
Listen. That's my bro. We coming from other lands and stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's crazy.
I destroyed this man.
You're on my record.
Bad.
You're on my record. The Israelites know you're on my record.
Jehovah,
the Israelites know your soul
so
is
bad.
mine. The Israelites know your soul is mine. 513 to know for sure.
Mute him, bro. Listen,
513 to know for sure.
Bro, it doesn't matter.
Come on, y'all. You don't get nobody. Let's keep it together.
This is about my brother God energy.
Okay. But God, I'm telling God,
listen.
Do not fuel somebody's insanity. We don't do that here.
Listen, bro. I've been dealing with Jehovah for years. You feel what I'm saying? We got a rapport from other lands and things like that. You know what I mean? So whatever we got going on it's all good. I'm not new to him. He's not new to me. I didn't just meet him off of this platform or nothing like that. You feel what I'm saying?
Y'all excuse me for a second. Due diligence. Turn your mic, turn your camera.
So I want to say this before
I still can't see you. You gotta turn on the light.
I just want to say this before.
Turn on the light.
I'm in my car, son. I'm in my car.
I can't do it.
I just want to say this before Jehovah, Holy Ghost, tries to sit over here and pander and ego stroke and self-adulate. Even though I don't care for the polls like that, the polls, and I am the least in the kingdom when it comes to sa.neter TV. So if I won the poll, that means nobody agreed with you. I mean, maybe a small few, but I lose in the polls on sa.neter every time. So that means that everybody who don't even rock with me didn't rock with you, bro. And that's horrible because I never win the polls in HOK. That means nobody, and if you think that he beat me, but you don't believe he's the Holy Ghost, I won because I wasn't here to prove that Haile Selassie was nobody. I was only here to use Haile Selassie as a instrument to prove that
that's when you
somebody else.
The title was
I'm talking. I need you to act like you have some decorum, because the Holy Ghost would. But you didn't show that in the debate. That's why even sa.neter ruled in my favor, because you showed that you did not have even the 9 behaviors of the Holy Spirit. You acted a fool toward the end because you was hurt that the polls were in my favor. And that shows that this Negro is not who he says he is. He is an arrogant, sociopathic, Messiah complex Negro suffering. Hold on. I'm not done.
I'm gonna shut him down in a minute.
Yeah, and then bring it back together.
Hold on, y'all, because Apostle, why don't you go set up the show so they can all come over there? I don't want this all on the brother show, man.
I don't want to do this over here. I really didn't want
to. Go over to the Coliseum, Apostle. Want me to set it up right quick?
Please do, because I'm about to smack this boy.
I can't hear you, Apostle.
It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Apostle,
where you at?
You muted me. I said yes, sir.
All right, I'm gonna set it up right now. All right, I'm gonna set it up right now. So y'all keep talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me say this last thing, and I'm not going to be long. I promise I won't be.
Nah. Save it for the Coliseum. It's gonna
Okay.
in 2 minutes.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
All right. While we here, God Energy, real quick, go ahead and do your closing. And if you want to come over, you can come on over.
Yeah. So just to clarify, right, as we went through the information from 47,000 BCE with the Aegnasian culture, documenting that they had identical morphology to Aboriginal Tasmanians and Australians and Melanesians, basically documenting their blackness, so to speak. Moving on to the Oberkassel findings and Cheddar Man from 14,000 and 10,000 BC, documenting that they had black skin and blue eyes with their quote unquote blackness. We talked about the movement of the E haplogroup into Spain. And then from Spain, that went into Northern Europe, into Britain, with that layer of blackness. The A haplogroup was found in the Aegean Islands in Greece. The A haplogroup is a basal haplogroup of Africa associated with African hunter-gatherers, right? So this is foundational African haplogroups that are associated specifically with African morphology, meaning A haplogroup means you look African. That was found in Greece in the Aegean Islands. The earliest Greek civilization, the Minoans, Hercules was depicted black. So we have the Caucians in Turkey. We have so many layers of blackness that gets deposited. The Uptown Girl and the Dorset findings, right, of 600 AD. They talk about how the Phoenicians were mining tin in Britain. The tin trade does facilitate that. The insular Celtic languages do preserve grammatical affinity with Afro-Asiatic languages, meaning this left a linguistic footprint of Afro-Asiatic speakers. So just in closing, we layered multiple layers, multiple cultural vehicles that would have brought quote unquote blackness, non-African and African blackness into Europe. And you could see it represented in the art motifs through Hercules. You could see it represented in the folklore and the fairy tales like the Svart Alfar or the Swarthy Elf or the Black Oppressor, featured in Welsh narratives like the King Arthur legend, right? So the presence of this blackness in Europe from 47,000 BCE to 1300 AD has been well documented through the genetic, linguistic, and anthropological record.
All right. God Energy. God's Energy present the Europeans ancient and modern Brits part 1. Yes, sir.
I want y'all to know that it's already going live over there. So exit out and head over there. I already dropped the link in the chat.
Okay.
Called
All
the
right,
Royal
I got
Rumble.
you.
It's called the Royal Rumble.
What you like?
I said it's called the Royal Rumble.
Oh, okay. Got
That don't mean you can curse. All right, we out.
Rules apply. Thank you. So listen,